In 2006, Illinois-based studio Volition combined their understanding of gangster rap culture, GTA's open-world crime sandbox gameplay, and their own new ideas for what an open-world game could do to create Saints Row. And in 2008, the series' second entry truly broke Saints Row away from being just another GTA clone.
Go, 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 go! This could be going better.
Welcome to the Bravosity. I'm Brevin, and with me again is Nathaniel.
What up, bitches?
And today we are reviewing and discussing why Saints Row 2 is one of the best damn games I've ever played and holds the blueprint to making a truly good open world experience. Like the video, tell us what you think in the comments below, share this around with anyone you think would enjoy it, and we're going to be reviewing Saints Row 3, 4, and the new reboot over the next few months. So subscribe to the Bravosity and hit that bell to stay updated on that and get to know when those videos are coming out. And bam! Here we are. We're out of the scripted intro and we're into the open discussion talking about Saints Row 2. I'm here, like I said, with Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Now, Saints Row 2 is fully co-op.
Alright, so it's not the easiest way, but it's the quickest. Besides, now I get to tag along.
And we've been playing it together and separate. And there's a lot of fun to be had in co-op. One big difference between the two of us is I grew up playing a lot of Saints Row 3 and 4, and never played much Saints Row 2 until pretty recently, until like this year, I think. It was when I may have played a little bit, but now is when I really have dove into it.
Now I've played Saints Row 2 since I was like 7 or 8. It was one of the only games we had on our Xbox 360. Once we finally got one, that is. And yeah, probably shouldn't have played it so young, to be honest. But it's a good time. It set my expectations kind of high for most open world games, to be honest. But my expectations in certain mechanical aspects were set pretty low.
Right.
But it wasn't just from Saints Row 2. It was all the games I had back then they're glitchy.
So talking about the experience that Saints Row 2 wants to offer and how it differs from a GTA. And to me, biggest difference, of course, is being the leader of a gang, being the leader of the Saints, and getting to customize your gang and customize yourself. And it's just about living that 90s, early 2000s gangster rap lifestyle that has been talked about in those songs. Not necessarily the real lives that those gangsters of that time or even those people lived, but the fantasy that they have portrayed in their music. Yeah, and I'm not saying, I'm not trying to say that they aren't real,
Yeah. But,
they're
hyperbolizing a little bit. It's kind of like this hyperbolic, glorified kind of view of their life. While some of them, not all of them, lived through some of this stuff, they often shine it in a light that actually doesn't really make it sound as bad as it is. NWA, for example, didn't really live through almost anything their songs talk about except a tiny bit from Eazy-E selling drugs. But other than that, they're talking about shooting people and stuff, and people shouldn't be taking that in a good way. But obviously they got super popular and people kind of looked up to that.
And it's about not taking shit from anybody. It's about that feeling.
It's that power.
Yes. The music itself is a power fantasy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, especially now with, rap music being such a mainstream thing in today's society, there's a lot of people that do live by that sort of idea of taking what you please, taking what...
Yeah.
Like a survival of the fittest sort of view almost.
Yeah, and it's really like how you could apply our natural instincts type of power fantasy to the modern environment.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is. You get to take over a city. You get to do lots of different things, whatever you please in this city. And that's where GTA... That's sort of the idea of GTA as well, just being a random person that can do whatever they want in a city with no consequences.
Yeah, make society your bitch. That's what you mean.
Right.
And literally in Saints Row 2 for the most part. Like, you become untouchable by police, practically, if you're good at the game. If you don't suck, then you're untouchable by the police. You eliminate all competition. You own almost everything.
So the difference between Saints Row's fantasy and Grand Theft Auto's fantasy. Grand Theft Auto is more about being a criminal, whereas Saints Row is about being a gang leader.
Yeah.
Similar, but I think the Saints Row fantasy appeals more to certain people.
Yeah.
And me being included.
I would say that it also is a little bit more extreme on the power fantasy, in a sense, because in GTA, even though you are practically making society your bitch in a way, you're not quite like...
You're not taking over the city.
Yeah, you're not taking over everything. I don't know. I think it's a little bit more grounded, and therefore you aren't as much of a badass necessarily. Right.
And that will help push us into conversation about tone and the setting. And again, we're going to keep comparing this to GTA because it's the
same type.
Yes, it's
of game.
Like I said, until we get a
definitely different.
Until we get a better genre name, they're open world urban sandboxes.
Yeah.
Urban crime sandboxes. So GTA, for the whole series, it's had its ups and downs, but it's been relatively realistic. Especially in GTA 4, which is what came out the same year as Saints Row 2. And it's a very grounded and realistic take in the story, and a relatively grounded, realistic take in the gameplay. But of course, in the gameplay, you're still, like, you can still take plenty of bullets, and when you get arrested, you get, like, let right out, and there is fantasy to even GTA. But what I think one thing that sets Saints Row apart is it does have that realism and that groundedness in its story and its setting a little bit, but the actions... All the actions you're doing are usually very over the top and ridiculous.
Yeah, and the gameplay itself, while some parts of it are realistic, other parts, you can tell it's pretty crazy. Not really grounded. Like, throwing people, or the driving mechanics as a whole, even though it's, like, not terrible, it's still not as realistic as GTA.
But what I think works about Saints Row 2 is it has this goofy, over-the-top gameplay contrasted with its very gritty, I don't know if gritty is the right word, but grounded and cynical world and story.
Everybody on the street is an asshole.
Yeah.
If you stand there for too long, they will say something eventually that would likely piss off most people.
Yeah, or just something horrible. Like, I mean, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus or something, but there's just a lot of stuff like, I haven't talked to my kids sober in 10 years. Just like, everyone is a narcissistic asshole and out for themselves, which makes the fantasy, the power fantasy of doing whatever you want, being whatever you want, feel more justified, I suppose, because everybody else is just a big of a narcissistic asshole almost. Maybe not just, they're just not as strong. They're just not as powerful.
And they're not quite as much of psychopaths as the main character, but everybody is...
The gangsters are, though.
Oh yeah, the other gangsters are just as big of psychopaths, but I mean, like, random people on the street, they're not quite to the level of psychopath where you're murdering people, but those people are definitely not great people. And beyond that, in cutscenes with random civilians, every single person, even the regular people, seem unjustified unless they're outright a victim in the cutscene. And even then, sometimes they're not.
Right, and like, business owners are like usually assholes or say something crazy, and the all the people you talk to do your activities, which we'll get into, sort of like side quest type things, they all have like horrible schemes to get on top.
If I get in the Brilliant Book of World Records for most patients served, I think that would send a message that women are just as proficient, if not more so, than their male counterparts.
All right.
Where are you going?
You said you were planning on treating more patients, so I figured you wanted me to hurt some people.
Oh, God, no. Surgery takes a lot of time. I need you to fake multiple injuries so I can treat you faster than I normally could.
Doesn't cheating to get a world record kinda undercut your point?
I'll live.
Like, then also all the businesses have parody names of things as well.
Which is very goofy.
Yeah.
That's another goofy thing. But when you go to the business, I mean, the people still say really goofy things, and there is plenty of goofiness in Saints Row, but it has this grittiness. It has this more grounded tone. My experience with the series being Saints Row 3 and 4, I was surprised by how witty this game is. Like, it has actual clever lines all throughout it, like Johnny Gat wanting the statute of limitations on his 200 counts of homicide.
Or the chief of police defending himself on TV for the fact that he was an undercover cop in the Saints in the first game. And, like, even after definitely just being an actual gangster his entire time as an undercover cop, he's pulling the, well, actually, I was just doing my duty for the city this whole time.
And I will say, when you look at GTA, any of them past, like, San Andreas, like, GTA 3 doesn't have very good characterization in really anybody. I'm thinking of 4 mainly for some reason, but the whole series, everybody has quirks, has goofiness to them, a lot of people. And then they're also relatively shitty people. Like they've got their bad things. But most of their characters have a
redeeming quality?
Yes. Other than Trevor Phillips. Everybody but Trevor Phillips has redeeming qualities and they seem to be trying to make a relatable character. And we don't get that with anybody in Saints Row, I don't think.
I mean, there's a few other characters throughout GTA that don't have that quality, but of main characters that you play as, it's just Trevor that doesn't have it. But yeah, Saints Row 2, all the main characters are not very well redeemed.
And most of the ones that have good qualities in GTA, or most of the ones that don't have good qualities, that are just complete shitty people, I guess. I don't know what else to call it, villains.
Yeah.
They are the villains of the game a lot of the time.
Yeah, like, I think it's Vice City has a lady from an earlier game who's outright just a murderer. Oh, yeah. And that's like her entire character is just that she's a crazy, crazy bitch is literally how they would describe it in GTA.
But even like, this is kind of less known part of the whole GTA series, but the Lost in the Damned, the biker gang expansion in GTA 4, even them being as shitty as they are, there's redeeming qualities to them. And they try to make them somewhat relatable. And it might sound counterproductive to make a game full of unrelatable assholes, but when it's got this tongue-in-cheek comedy going throughout it, and
it's a reflection of what we all want to do to society.
Yeah, I suppose.
In a way, when you're sitting in your car in traffic for 30 minutes straight, and you're about to pop out of your car like the guy from Falling Down, then you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that whole idea that you just were talking about was the idea behind GTA 3, behind the open world crime sandbox. And I think Saints Row 2 just leans into it more, and they understand the fantasy people are looking for from that, or at least the fantasy I'm looking for. But I think that overall plays into the fantasy most people are looking for. Again, the comedy, it's actually a really funny game. We've talked about the differences between GTA and Saints Row 2, but both of them are still very cynical parodies or satires of the United States, counterbalanced with a really goofy side.
Yeah. We talked mainly about how it's slightly more extreme in certain aspects.
In both ways. On both ends, it's more extreme. I feel like it's more cynical, but it's also way more goofy.
Yeah, at the same time. Because, like, I mean, GTA does the same thing with some of their, like, say, the stores being named goofy stuff. But outright, Saints Row 2, you show up to Freckle Bitches to get a burger. Or you go to On the Rag to go buy clothes, or go to Rim Jobs
Rusty's Needles.
Make your car nice. Yeah, Rusty's Needles to get a tattoo.
Those are like quick little semi-clever jokes.
But then, like, throughout the actual cutscenes, they usually get way more clever or more of a parody of society in a really goofy, funny way than GTA usually does. And on the radio commercials.
GTA's got those too, though. GTA's got the radio shows.
I know they got the funny stuff but I think that Saints Row does it better in
And
a way.
I think that is
Like-
because of that massive contrast, because of how far they go in the goofy direction and how far they go in the cynical, gritty direction. And I don't want to talk too much about this because we're going to review these games, but the future titles in the series start to lose that grit and start to go towards goof.
And I think they lose a lot of the cleverness with it.
Yeah.
Because being too goofy usually isn't very clever.
And I will say there isn't much quirk in the characters. The characters aren't quirky. They're assholes.
And
but they're clever assholes.
Leaning too cynical, while cynical humor usually has to be way more clever to be funny. You could end up like Family Guy, where it's just depressing all the time. They made sure in Saints Row 2, though, to really balance it really well, to where their goofy humor makes it to where it's not all depressing. But at the same time, they don't go so goofy as to lose that cleverness.
And I think that's a pretty good point to move into the art design. We're going to go back and talk a little more about what we were just talking about in the story section, but we don't want to talk about the campaign, the main story, yet. So we're going to talk about the art design and Stillwater as a whole. So the art design, to me, this came out the same year as Grand Theft Auto 4. And I would say Saints Row 2 looks a generation behind.
Yeah, for sure. The graphics aren't as fleshed out.
Right. I'm talking about just the level of detail on like the textures.
Yeah.
And some of the... It's got a lot of sharp angles and cubes and...
They definitely have more I meant less polygons.
Right.
GTA has more, so everything looks smoother.
It reminds me of sort of like Knights of the Old Republic or Jade Empire, its art style. Just when it comes to the amount of details and all the textures. But the actual amount of clutter in the world and like the items on your character is a lot more than last generation game like that. And I think that is what having that less graphically intensive, less technically intensive art design allowed them to do with their relatively lower budget compared to GTA, was have a lot of clutter and a lot of stuff.
A lot of unique assets.
Yes.
Like there's some buildings that are only in one spot and you don't see it anywhere else.
And I would say that GTA 4 probably has a lot of that. There's a lot of fine details in that game.
Yeah.
And like we said, the overall graphics are technically better. But I think because GTA 4 is from that era where realistic games, like the big budget games that tried to look as realistic as possible, were like all brown and gray and like very muted colors. I genuinely think Saints Row 2 is aged better.
I think
in regards to its art style.
The art style of that GTA, I think, gives off a certain tone in itself.
True.
And I don't think that it's aged well, like you were saying. But the kind of brighter type of colors they use for Saints Row 2, I do think is going to probably continue to age well.
And I will say that Saints Row 2 still has a relatively muted color palette. There's not too much bright colors throughout Saints Row 2, but it's definitely more colorful. Maybe it's that look of trying to look realistic, but being on a budget and having to sort of make it look like a game from the generation previous. Has a unique look that has aged very well to me.
Well, I mean, there's moments where it's got the muted colors and moments where it's not because of the shading in the night-day cycle.
Yeah.
Because there's times during the morning or the sunset where everything does get a pretty nice orange hue. But the sky is sometimes also really bright.
Yeah.
Compared to most other games. Then there's also times where the sky is just overcast.
Yeah,
and
the
everything
game looks
gets
like
a gray shade.
The game starts to look more like GTA 4.
Yeah.
That's how GTA 4 looks like all the time.
Yeah. It looks like that all the time in GTA 4.
Especially in the Lost and the Damned expansion. There's like a filter on everything.
To make it look even grayer?
Yes, and I will say Ballad of Gay Tony makes the world brighter in general.
That's interesting.
And
I like Ballad of Gay Tony more anyways.
I still don't think... I mean, I don't know if I could say it hasn't aged as well. That's definitely not an objective thing, but it's completely subjective.
I like Ballad of Gay Tony.
But I think Just art design wise, I think overall the graphics in all those GTA 4 games are they look more realistic, but the textures also have this weird like muddy look to them.
Yeah.
That bothers me for some reason.
Yeah. It kind of gives me the same vibes as a lot of Modern Warfare 1.
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 1,
That's
a
right in
lot
that
of
same
stuff is
era.
like really gray and doesn't have a lot of color.
Gears of War, Killzone, Fallout 3, and New Vegas even. I
New
think would
Vegas
fit
had
into
a
that.
nice orange most of the time. But the sky also looked weird. It wasn't very blue. But
It's
then
because
again,
that orange tint
nuclear-
was a screen filter.
Yeah. Nuclear annihilation will do that to the sky.
But that all started, I believe, with Resident Evil 4 in 2004. It was a very brown game, and everybody liked the way that looked. But I will say I think the character models look better in that game because they look more similar to what we have here in Saints Row 2, which is not necessarily a compliment because that's a game that came out in 2004 on the GameCube. But I think that game has aged relatively well when it comes to character models because they don't have those muddy textures that Grand Theft Auto 4 has. And I just think Saints Row 2 looks surprisingly well. Its art design has really held up. Cutscenes, great. Animation is usually pretty fantastic. I mean, it's not super detailed, of course, because like we've talked about with the graphics style, but the cinematography is relatively average and boring, but what's happening in the cinematics is usually pretty fun, and there is a bit of an energy to them, but it's relatively grounded even with camera work as well.
Sometimes Pierce falls into the uncanny valley, though. You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Specifically, Pierce seems to
His
do it
face
more
is
than
weird.
other characters. But some of the other main characters, it's not as bad.
Hair looks kind of weird,
Hair does look really
especially
weird.
Johnny Gat's hair.
And then Shondi, who's supposed to have dreads, I think.
Yeah.
But they look like like cylindrical octagons in
right.
a way.
The cars sort of all look like Hot Wheels,
It depends on the car, but a lot of them, yeah.
especially like the Lambos and like the sports cars, I think.
Yeah. Some of the gangster cars, especially from the some Sons of Samity, those guys' cars definitely look like Hot Wheels.
Yeah,
outright. The
what's the
is it Danville?
yeah
The
the
Danvilles?
Danville.
Yeah, those things
They
look.
suck so bad.
I
too.
swear that I might have had a Hot Wheel that looks exactly like a Danville.
I feel like I might have as well.
Yeah.
And like you talked about, lots of unique assets. And
Yeah.
that brings us to the city. Graphically, from a technical level, it's all very not that great even for the time. But I think from an artistic level, there's some really great looking buildings and areas and extremely varied areas. And that brings us into we'll sort of talk about the art design and just the overall design of the city, which is the thing you're going to be doing everything in the game in.
Yeah. I think something that actually made the art design better is that it kind of pops out more due to the variety within the city. Because
Yes.
it's not just like back to with GTA. A lot of the time, Liberty City especially looks very similar in a lot of parts. While there is some differences in certain areas, it's like you have to judge the like art design as a whole off of most of the city all in one. And it's not really different in a lot of spots.
And that's a game where, especially in their map design, they were trying to go as realistic as possible for the time.
Yeah, and New York City as a base is pretty boring overall when it comes to that. In real life, there's tons of unique looking stuff in New York City.
And there is some really good looking stuff like their equivalent of
Times Square.
Times Square. Their version of Times Square is really cool looking. And their Statue of Liberty and all that stuff. There's plenty of interesting looking locations.
Yeah.
And again, Ballad of Gay Tony, there's some interesting nightclubs and a lot more bright stuff and some interiors that are cool.
But it's relatively more specific locations look interesting, but not whole like different districts.
Right. I would say GTA 5 solves that issue though. I would say GTA 5 has a very diverse
GTA 5
well done.
5 definitely did, where there's like whole different towns even.
Yeah.
And
I would
countryside.
Say even before GTA 4, San Andreas does better than GTA 4 does at creating diverse areas and neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So I think it's just Liberty City that sucks.
Yeah. So the game that this one is probably going to be compared to quite a bit.
I would say Saints Row 2's one really good thing about Saints Row 2's map that could be seen as a negative by some. Stillwater does not feel like any specific city in the US. It feels like
it's a mix.
It's a conglomeration of every city and culture,
Like
and like U.S. culture. It's any town, USA, but from the most cynical perspective possible, which is just fantastic.
Really, the only thing that would help narrow down what city it would likely be representing is the fact there's water next to it, and that's about it.
Right, and they're on islands, aren't they?
Yeah, so...
But there's also...
There's like an area that looks like New York skyscrapers.
Yeah.
A Chinatown, but then there's like a trailer park area.
Yeah.
And no gigantic city has one in a location that close to their skyscrapers except for maybe Dubai.
and it's just grimy looking. And then there's like the hood, the straight ghetto that just looks gross, and all the NPC designs change when you go into there, and you get grimier people.
An industrial area, an airport area. There's some areas that are like randomly richer looking and nicer, right next to some very different locations.
But again, I don't think it feels random.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like they just place stuff everywhere. It's
the richer community that is closest to a lot of the poor areas is in a gated community.
Right.
It's like a small section of buildings, very small section, but you probably drive through it a lot since it's next to the airport road. But then towards the area where Altor's got, I feel like it's a good build-up to that.
Yeah.
But it's not like super slow build-up to the nicer area. Yeah. But at the same time, it's a good introduction almost every time you're driving into it.
And there's some really cool... unique areas like the marina. You've got like a big pirate ship. There's the Greek area and
and that one's really different than most cities. That's like actual outright Greek ruins. Yeah. And I feel like they put that there almost for fun.
Yeah, and I always imagined it was more of like a recreation, just it's not actual Greek ruins.
But they do have like rubble, which is kind of weird to
like Old West Town.
Rubble. Old West Town.
But it's Old Greece Town.
But I feel like their marina gives a California vibe.
And let's talk about the number of interiors in this game.
There is a pretty good amount of interiors. A lot of them are used in missions.
Extremely surprising amount of interiors for me compared to...
Especially when you look at the like technical graphics. When looking at it from just the technical standpoint, you're going to be like, okay, this is about as much as this game's going to have to offer me. And then all of a sudden, there's a ton of interiors that actually have enough clutter and everything to seem pretty convincing in a lot of them.
And a lot of them have use. The mall has different shops you can go to.
Yeah, they're unique to the entire map.
Right.
Like leather and lace.
The casinos you can play blackjack and poker in, which we didn't even know till recently.
Yeah, I remember even going back into that casino and never even figuring out that there was an event or any kind of activity.
And the number of buildings you can buy, which we'll get into the real estate system later when we talk more about gameplay.
Yeah.
But
the number of shops in general is a pretty large amount of stores across the whole map.
Yeah. And each one, most of them are unique.
There's quite a few different varied businesses that have different purposes across the city. And I mean, almost all except for the food places and I think the gas stations and the car dealerships. Almost all of them except for those three have interiors. And they all
The gas stations a lot of the time have interiors.
Oh, wait, some of the gas stations do. I remember quite a few that you just buy right at the front door. It's weird. But it's actually pretty surprising how well they've designed the interiors of some of these buildings. I mean, some of their larger buildings, there's way less clutter, but in their like tinier interiors and places you buy, there is quite a bit of stuff that makes it seem pretty compelling.
There's very large interiors in certain places. There's really interesting, like the planetarium and...
Yeah, the mall is gigantic for like
the mall.
Most of the interiors of the places.
But let's talk about what are you doing in this world. Let's talk about the actual gameplay, which is where we start to get into a little bit of the negatives. Kind of. Nothing that bad. We're going to talk about the combat.
You don't mess around, do you?
Shooting controls, again, feel a generation behind.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got third-person aiming with a reticle, and then you can zoom in by clicking the stick. And that was a big thing of, like, original Xbox and PlayStation 2 shooters.
I would say the optimization when it comes to, like, the whole aiming the reticle kind of feels about on par.
It is a little stiff.
And
It feels rather imprecise.
yeah, that's how I describe it.
That's a combination of the aiming, but that's also that's also added to by the inaccuracy of a lot of the weapons, especially the automatics.
And, I mean, that carries over into other aspects of impreciseness as well, kind of like driving, which we'll get to.
But I don't think the impreciseness is too much of a detriment in the combat, because I think...
Yeah. I think they balanced it pretty well with other things you can do in combat.
Well, and I think the ramshackle feel of it works for this gang warfare.
You're not an outright special forces soldier running around, but you are kind of a mass murderer who's been practicing it from the first game.
Yeah, but it feels fine for gang warfare. And once again, I think it's better than GTA 5 or GTA 4 because of their god-awful super auto-aim system that takes zero skill.
It takes away almost all of the worthwhileness of their combat. It's more of where you're standing and less of anything else in the entire game.
I could talk shit about GTA's shooting for days.
I do think that it worked way better with Red Dead Redemption because the whole the fastest hand in the West type thing. How you should be able to draw right to somebody's head real quick. Things like that fit the vibe and the tone of that type of game. But when it comes to gang warfare, gangsters aren't known necessarily for their perfect accuracy or something like that. You know?
And I think GTA type gangsters maybe. Someone like Nico Bellic. Who's a trained
killers, yeah. They're known for their accuracy.
But, Franklin, Trevor, Michael, maybe?
He practices at range, so maybe.
Right.
But other than that, all the characters in San Andreas.
The actual guns definitely feel better, sound better, and all that in GTA 5.
For sure.
I don't think they do in GTA 4.
I think that they feel better, at least, definitely in animation. For sure. Their animation, even in 4, animations with guns look better.
Yeah.
And
for sure. I'll agree with that.
I don't know necessarily about feel and sound better.
And I don't think 4's got dual-wielding pistols and SMGs.
Yeah, which is what great. You can do in Saints Row 2.
And the guns do feel satisfying. And weapon variety is pretty nice. There's a decent amount of every type of weapon. And I would say the best feeling weapons are the shotguns. The shotguns feel fantastic to use.
I did just think of another flaw. This is a flaw with especially apparent with the sniper rifle. If you're moving at all while trying to shoot with that gun, your bullet will fly off in a random direction.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
And if you stop and stand still and shoot, it will not fly off a random direction. Or if you are a passenger in a car, it will still fly in the right direction. But that sometimes carries over into other weapons where it's almost like the animation of your character turning to face the direction you're shooting kicks in after the bullets left the gun. And that sometimes happens on full auto weapons, but you won't notice because you're just holding down the trigger and the next bullet will hit them.
Right. And that brings up the finickiness of the technical state of Saints Row 2.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of jank, here and there, especially compared to the $1 million polish that Rockstar can afford to give the GTA games.
Yeah.
And that is definitely one way that they are better than Saints Row 2. Most of them.
mechanically and the amount of money they can throw at it.
I'll say before GTA 4, like GTA San Andreas and Vice City definitely were filled with some technical issues. On par with the time, and they had a lower budget. But GTA 4, all of its expansions, GTA 5, are much better polished, have a lot more fine details to their world and like the AI of their NPCs and stuff. But I think that Volition with Saints Row 2 focused on the right things, which weren't making the most realistic and detailed world as possible. But that's a little broader than we were talking about right now.
Do you want to move to melee weapons?
Well, explosives
feel
really good. Satchel charges are always fun.
Oh yeah,
Rocket
satchel
launchers
charges
feel
are the
pretty
most overpowered thing in the game. But I don't think it's... and the grenade launcher. It all depends on how much strategy you're using.
In co-op, you can PvP, and when doing that, you can very clearly see how imprecise the weapons are.
And it is kind of strange. Certain weapons have a weird amount of damage they do than other ones. Like, the sniper rifle can blow up a car in 3 shots. And sometimes 2 shots, depending on the car.
That makes sense to me.
Hitting another player, and it insta-kills all NPCs. Hitting another player, though, it only deals like 1/5 or less of their health. But then headshots with pistols do about the same exact damage as a headshot with a sniper rifle. But then shotguns are super powerful in PvP.
Shotguns are powerful all the time.
A specific auto pistol is more powerful than all the SMGs. The one that has a laser sight is more powerful than all the SMGs and other pistols combined. And the LMGs and assault rifles are super, super weak in PvP. Their overall, how they've attributed damage, at least in regard to the co-op PvP, is very strange. But how you're probably going to see it most of the time playing against NPCs, you won't notice that. The weapons do a good amount of damage to NPCs. Even the weakest pistol takes somebody out in like 4 shots, sometimes 5. And then everything insta-kills with a headshot, except for SMGs, which they take like 2. I think that all the damage on NPCs is perfectly fine. It's just when it comes to PvP, kind of weird.
And I would also say the balance of how much ammo you can carry and how much it costs and how much you can fill up feels very good.
Yeah.
It feels, if you're on normal, there's 3 difficulty modes: casual, normal, hardcore. I played on normal, we played on normal. Most people are going to play on normal, I assume.
We use mods a lot, though, too. Not mods, I meant cheats. My bad.
Well, I went through and replayed the whole game without cheats.
We both played it without cheats. I played a long time ago. He played it recently. When we hop on co-op, oftentimes we use cheats for fun. Right. Pedestrian warfare.
But without the cheats, there's a very good balance of ammunition for the most part.
Yeah.
And I never felt completely comfortable in most encounters. I usually felt like I was needing ammo in a lot of guns.
I felt pretty good for the most part because of some of the other mechanics we'll get to in a little bit. Because I utilized them really well most of the time. Do you think now's a good time to talk about melee?
Yeah, there's a wide selection of melee weapons, although the baseball bat and the sledgehammer are the only ones that you really need.
Yeah, or the taser just for fun.
Yeah.
You just keep on constantly shooting it as
technically
somebody's
a melee
down.
Weapon.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. The taser, which has a short range, is a melee weapon.
There's a number of different melee weapons, plus your fists. And overall melee combat is basic, but more depthful than I would imagine for a game than I expected for a game like this.
It all depends, I think, on the weapon specifically too.
I'm just saying, even the fact that it has blocking.
Yeah, there is blocking.
Is better
I forget
than
they
most
even
games.
have it most of the time, but
is better.
And then they
GTA.
have power attacks are different depending on fighting styles you choose. There's all sorts of stuff. But
there's only like 4 different fighting styles.
Yeah, but there's 2 different kinds of power attacks per fighting style. And if you can get a chain of hits on somebody, it'll go into an animation where you just put the whoop down on them in different ways.
And this isn't like Fallout, like this isn't an RPG. You're not gonna be able to main melee weapons through like the whole game. I mean, it's probably possible
With a baseball bat until you get to a boss fight or a vehicle combat.
Right,
Then you
right.
really could run through most of the game. But
it would be difficult, even
Yeah.
with the baseball bat.
it would be. But
But they
there
feel
is
useful.
certain aspects of the melee combat that I don't like. It's
Like the ragdoll with the baseball bats and
no.
sledgehammers.
Those would be fine if the other melee weapons weren't so incredibly outclassed.
Yeah.
Because there's so many melee weapons that do a super short stun when you hit somebody, and they'll be able to shoot you before your next hit.
Whereas the baseball
Which-
bat and the sledgehammer
Yeah,
completely
knock someone
knocks-
off their feet.
They ragdoll.
And they go into a ragdoll, and then they have to get all the way back up, and it only takes 2 hits to kill them with those weapons. Whereas the weapons that do just the really short stun animation, those take a good amount of hits. It's honestly better to use your fists and go into the animation if you get a chain of hits on them, to where you do a really heavy damage dealing attack when it triggers that animation. That's actually better most times.
What about blades? Are they one of the ones that do the short stun, or do they do any stun at all?
They do stun. All melee weapons do short stun, like unless they knock you off your feet or the taser. But melee weapons are like blades,
Don't they have
police batons.
Don't they have
and
animations? Blades?
I don't think they do.
I believe the sword.
Oh, the sword. Yes, the sword does have animations. I forgot about the sword.
The knife doesn't. I
And
think you're right.
you can power attack with the melee weapons too, but they do not have as high of range of animations and abilities as the fist combat.
A power attack breaks a block too, right?
I think so.
And that's a
I'm not entirely sure.
that is a very basic but serviceable, much more serviceable than most other
Yeah.
open world crime sandboxes
For
melee
sure.
combats of having basic attack, blocking, power attack.
Yeah.
Sort of rock paper scissors system. Use quick attack if somebody's not blocking, block if somebody's using a quick attack, use a heavy attack if somebody's blocking.
Yeah.
Perfectly
It's-
serviceable system.
I think it's more just the imbalance of their weapons with melee is the problem, but I mean, it's a good time if you're playing co-op to run around with a baseball bat and just whack your friend and then they ragdoll all of a sudden.
And on
It's
top of that,
definitely a fun game when just playing around, messing around.
other melee weapons you can have are tons of different things you could find laying around the world. Mailboxes,
Yeah, random objects, trash bags, trash cans. Oh, what are those called? Meters, parking meters.
Yeah, parking
and
meter.
those things, they do very little melee damage. A lot of them usually do little melee damage unless they're larger object in that your character will hold with both hands. If they're larger, it'll usually knock someone off their feet. It still doesn't do that much damage, but you can lock them in a ragdoll practically if you
and you
keep
can
hitting them.
also throw them.
Yeah, and when you can throw them, that's when the parking meter becomes the ultimate weapon of mass destruction.
It is very... The finicky aim does not help you in that situation.
It likely won't go the direction that you're looking. And if you're moving at all when you throw it, it will not in any way go the direction you're trying to aim.
But that's one of the ways where its finickiness adds to its fun factor.
Yeah,
Like,
because
in a lot of ways that it does that.
I think it's especially true when playing it co-op. This is definitely a game that, I mean, you should probably play through the story in all seriousness, like on your own, so that you can really digest some of it. But when it comes to just messing around, or if you've already played the story, or if you think you're going to later on your own, you should definitely try it out with your friend. Parking meter insta-kills other players, by the way. Remember that if you ever want to play this game.
If you throw it.
Yeah, if you throw
But
it.
it's usually going to go in a completely random direction.
Yeah, it also goes the farthest of any other object. I think that variety of random objects that you can pick up really added some to this game the later games don't have as much. It's kind
And
of
GTA
more...
doesn't have.
Yeah, and GTA doesn't have.
It's
It's more of the interactive environment,
Yes.
and also they had to put some of these in certain areas so that they're accessible, which added more clutter. Put them around for the clutter, and it just turned out to be good mechanically.
Like broken bottles you can pick up and attack people with.
I think so, yeah.
One thing I had a problem with, this is like somewhat beside the point, still talking about combat, with the weapons. And I guess this isn't really a problem now that I start thinking about it, but you get all the best weapons in the game most of the best weapons in the game, just by playing through the story.
And vehicles. There might be a couple, I think, that you can buy and don't earn, but it's very few.
I think they are,
and
like the mid-level
especially-
shotguns, SMG. And...
Yeah.
Now let's talk about avoiding damage.
Yeah, and this is the mechanic I was talking about early, is
Human shields.
human shields, yes.
There isn't any cover system in this game, which I'm fine with. There is a crouch button, and you can, of course, just play corners. Just play, like, squirrel around
Like,
the walls.
The moment you start to get low health, you just run behind a wall real quick. While they will chase you and try to get into sight, you can get just the second you need to start to regain some health.
Health regenerates if you don't get hit after a while, and in addition to that, you can hold 4 food and or drug or alcohol items, and each of those heals you just for a static amount as you take it.
Smoke a 40. No, wait, no. Smoke.
Yeah, smoke a 40.
Drink a 40. Drink a blunt and smoke a 40. Yeah. Oh no.
That's how you
drink
get your
a
health
40 and smoke a blunt.
You
and then
sound
eat
like
burgers.
you drank a 40 and smoked a blunt.
You should go home and rest.
If by resting you mean smoking an ounce, then hell yeah.
But eat cheeseburgers, drink a size of drink. Is it just a super large Coke or something like
donuts.
that? Oh
Chinese
eat donuts. Double cheeseburgers.
Oh yeah.
For some reason,
Called
I don't
the
know why
Fist.
they had that.
There's a big burger called the Fist.
I do think that you can find 40 ounces laying around, especially from drunkards. Yeah, you
I think
pour a
that's great.
40 on someone to revive them. When it comes to human shields, though, it can be a little overpowered sometimes, I think. But if you're getting mobbed by a large group of people, it's definitely necessary. You just run up, grab them real quick with just one button, and while a lot of the time they won't shoot through someone that's of their same faction, like the Sons of Samity would not shoot a Sons of Samity body shield you're using if you
For real,
grab one of them as a hostage. But if you shoot them,
then they'll start shooting.
yeah,
back.
then they'll shoot right through they'll try to shoot him. They'll try to shoot right through him and just kill their friend. Same with the police, but if you grab a random civilian, no one cares, including the police. Police will outright shoot a civilian to get to you. But it's kind of funny that the police work just like all the other gangs in this game.
Right. Everybody's horrible. That's the thing to remember about Saints Row 2.
Yeah.
I will say enemy design is bland, but on par for a GTA clone. You know, you just have basic humans that all work the same. It just depends on what weapon they're using. That's the difference.
Yeah.
And vehicles and helicopters, just your basic stuff.
Yeah, but they usually give different weapons to specific gangs, and then the police, and then there's random, very low-tier weapons that civilians sometimes have.
Yeah.
If you turn on pedestrian warfare, you'll find out how often a civilian spawns with a gun and how often they spawn with pepper spray.
You get pepper sprayed a lot.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Very few times, though, will you have a civilian have anything more than a melee weapon. It'll usually turn out to be a low-tier pistol. But sometimes with pedestrian warfare, they take out a cop, grab his weapon, all of a sudden you have a civilian using some high-tier weapon. It's kind of interesting.
One place the finicky aiming system is a little wonkier is in drive-bys.
Oh, yeah.
And it works a lot better when you're playing with 2 people. Because
Yeah.
one person can just focus on shooting and the other person can drive. And still, overall, I think it's a better shooting while driving system than GTA 4 or 5.
I don't know.
I think it
Does it
feels
still
better.
snap to people when driving in GTA 5?
I think so.
Well, I think the snapping to people works well as a mechanic while driving, for the fact that most of the time when driving fast, there is literally no time for you to aim at all without looking away and then running into something. But
It kind of feels fun, though, to just be driving and spraying everybody in front of you. But
Yeah, but you're likely not going to be able to spray people behind you.
Yeah. And
But,
whether or
you know,
not,
that is realistic. If you turn around in your seat trying to shoot someone behind you while driving, you're likely to go run into something.
but I would say one thing that makes Saints Row's combat good is its overall lack of care for realism in
Yeah.
its gameplay.
Another problem with their finicky shooting, like how I said, moving with the sniper rifle, the bullet doesn't go where you're aiming.
Yeah, so moving in a car while
Yeah.
you're shooting, the bullet
It definitely
still goes
doesn't
in
go
weird
where you're
places.
aiming unless you are stopped or shooting straight ahead of yourself or almost straight ahead of yourself.
So the key is usually to just line up your enemies right in front of you.
Yeah. Like,
unless you're
there's
playing with two
times
players.
when I'm playing, I'll be driving really fast, just shooting through the back windshield of anyone in front of me so that they die and then veer off to the side.
But I will say that's heavily remedied in co-op, where you can have
yeah.
one person shoot, one person drive.
Yeah, for sure. And driving as a whole in this game feels
Arcadey.
Arcadey in a way. Yeah.
I don't think it's
Like
bad.
some of the the gravity kind of acts weird, especially if you drive a big car.
Yeah.
Or big wheeled car. The larger the wheels you choose, the more this becomes noticeable on any car. It kind of is floaty a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the way I describe it. Almost like you're on the moon when the car's flying occasionally. How it's like falling at a very weird rate. There's not hits a terminal velocity that's still way too slow to make sense. Unless it's pushed by an explosion. If it's pushed by an explosion, it will go far sometimes. It's like hitting the swing set in GTA 4.
Oh yeah. I will say the overall speed you can get isn't very high. Like even the fastest cars are pretty slow.
That
has to do with the size of the world map, I think, though.
And beyond that, if you have a car that isn't floaty, it does move faster usually through turns, and because there will be moments where if you have a car with smaller wheels, it won't be floaty as much. If you have one with bigger wheels, then sometimes the wheels come off the ground ever so slightly, and you lose a ton of speed.
No wonder my cars always feel very floaty, because
you pick the biggest wheel option.
Yeah, as I'm trying to get into this gangster rap mindset, I gotta pick the giant rims and the biggest wheels I can possibly put on my vehicle.
Of course.
With the spinners.
Yeah.
And it's a big money sign.
If you have a car that has slightly smaller wheels and you've built the torque up to be the highest and have nitrous,
oh god,
you start moving real fast.
Don't even get me started on the nitrous. I hate the awful, exaggerated screen shake of the nitrous.
Oh yeah, it screen shakes when you use it, and
makes me want to puke.
It is exaggerated. It doesn't really bother me too much. I can usually aim it around pretty well, even when shaken. But if you're trying to make any kind of turn in that animation, or if you have to do any fine-tuning during that animation, good luck.
I just don't want...
It's all about timing.
I just don't want my eyeballs to hurt while I'm playing this game. That's what I want.
But overall, I think actual turning and everything...
Drifting
feels pretty good.
While everything, again, feels unrealistic, yes, it feels satisfying enough. The drifting is very over the top, and you just immediately turn.
Yeah.
But it feels good, and it works really well to traverse this American urban environment that's all blocks.
Yeah. And then, there's some pretty interesting roads that break out from that. Yeah.
While everything feels arcadey, the differences in types of vehicles are still there and as they should be. Like a van feels like a van.
The Danville, though, it looks like it'd be a nice car. But then it has super low speed up,
but it looks
super low acceleration, and then it has bad turn radius.
But I would say it looks like a car. Like in real life, it looks like a car that would look like a nice car, but actually be a piece of shit. If that makes any sense.
That's true. That is true.
Like an El Camino almost.
Yeah, an El Camino. Well,
El Camino kind of already looks like it'd be a piece of shit, though.
That's true. Sorry for El Camino drivers out there, but you know it's true.
This message is brought to you by Nathaniel's mom.
Oh yeah, my mom hates El Caminos. Oh, and don't even get her started on rancheros, because that's the Ford version. She doesn't like Fords either.
But if you don't have anything more to say about driving, I want to talk about boats.
Yeah, it's really strange feeling. It's kind of hard to describe. You speed up when it comes off the wave, which is weird.
I know what you're saying. It always sort of feels like your boat is slightly above the water.
Yeah, sometimes it definitely, actually a lot of the time it does. Overall, though, like, it's not a main focus, the boats aren't, of the game. It definitely is, I'd say, more fleshed out than the older GTAs where you die the moment you touch water.
Well, yeah, but equating it to GTA 4, which is what released at the same time, I think it's about on par.
If you're in the water swimming, you can press a button to warp to shore, and I actually, while that is super, like, unrealistic and,
it's so
what's the word I'm looking for? Non-immersive. While it's non-immersive in everything, it is the most convenient thing on Earth, because in all these GTA-like games, usually, if you can swim at all in the game, you move super slowly when swimming, no matter how fast you're trying to go. And in this game, you can be stranded out in the ocean, just click a button, and then you appear at the nearest thing of shore.
Because it knows that swimming back to shore is not going to be
so
fun.
Tedious.
Planes and helicopters.
Yeah. Helicopters, I actually like how they fly in this game a lot. I think that they're not too unwieldy like the helicopters in Ghost Recon Wildlands before they updated it to try and make helicopters not flip over because you're going too fast. You'd have to pull up repeatedly so it could
Whereas
balance
this one
out.
feels much more arcadey.
Yeah, this one doesn't let that occur, while at the same time, it's not like too slow. Well,
I'll say planes.
I think it feels really good.
Planes feel fine.
I like planes a lot, but it might be more the environment gives you so much to do with a plane for fun.
I was about to say the exact opposite. I was just about to say that I feel like planes have, like, no use.
Okay. In story, and in a lot of it, really, because you have to go out of your way so much to go to the airfield to get a plane, that they don't really provide you a good means of transportation, since you can only pick them up from one area. If you're driving it just for the fun of flying a plane, I think it works super well. You pick up speed when you go down in a realistic manner, which is weird that their terminal velocity for cars is way slower than that of a plane. But
because
unless a plane blows up midair, then all of a sudden its terminal velocity is just like the car.
Well, I was going to say it's because of that fun factor. It's more fun when a car ramps up and stays in the air for longer.
Yeah.
But it's more fun when a plane gains velocity by going downwards.
But I think because of the variety of assets used in the buildings and the overall map design, flying a plane around the map just for the fun of flying it feels so good.
While in the open world, there's notoriety system, 5-star system, very similar to GTA.
Yeah.
But the main difference is you also have the 3 gangs, 3 enemy gangs that you are at war with in Saints Row 2. And each of those gangs has their own respective
notoriety bar that fills up. And instead of a star, it'll just show their gang symbol.
Yes. You
can have the police and the gang in one gang be after you at the same time, but you can't have 2 gangs be after you at the same time, which is weird. Yeah, if you want to escape like a 5-star gang notoriety, go to another gang's territory and just shoot one of them real quick.
Because then you'll get 1 star in the next ones?
Yeah.
That's strange.
It's a little bit goofy. I'd say that one could have been fleshed out a little bit better to where you could have multiple, but I don't know how they would fit it in UI-wise, because...
And it probably, having that many people attacking you would probably cause technical issues.
Probably.
That's probably the main reason.
Just all the NPCs that are spawning at this point are all aggroed on you.
Yeah. And the notoriety system does work very well, providing an infinite gameplay loop that you can enjoy at any time if that's what you're looking for.
I like that they have more than one notoriety of just the police. Like GTA, there's even in some of these games, there's actual other rival gangs against you in some of the GTA
but you
games.
don't have that.
And you never have them chase after you except in a scripted mission.
Yeah.
And
when it offers more...
Or if you just fight a group of them.
Yeah.
And actually, there is something other than gangsters that doesn't have a notoriety system per se. In Saints Row 2, you can randomly find pimps walking around and fully dressed up in giant hat and pimp outfits. And if you fight one, all of them in eyesight will aggro to you. And they're extra strong. They're actually stronger than most NPCs, including the cops.
So, Saints Row's world has three different kinds of kinds of quest or goal or mission. You've got campaign missions, activities, and diversions. So campaign missions, obvious what that is, main story stuff. Activities are sort of like your side missions, and that's what we're going to be talking about now. And so the respect system, the way this works is you only unlock your campaign missions by filling up this respect meter, which you can only fill up by playing activities.
And diversion.
Well, does it fill up by playing diversions?
Yeah, like if you do the oncoming lane diversion, but it's only a limited amount when it comes to diversions, and only specific kinds. Like, what one? Throwing someone off a skyscraper will give you tons of respect.
And I think that this system works really well at getting you out and encouraging you to do things in the open world, like the activities and just random stuff like going really high, rather than just letting you do it of your own devices. It sort of pushes you to do it, but I think the respect bar fills up quick enough that it never feels like a grind. Like, I never felt like, oh, I gotta go do more activities to play my next campaign mission. I just want to play the campaign mission. Yeah. Like, it felt like I was gaining that respect pretty fast.
And you can also gain some of that respect during the mission. Like, if you kill another gang member, it gives you respect. If you headshot, it gives you respect. There's quite a few beatdowns. If you specifically melee somebody, it gives you respect.
The whole idea of respect works into that gangster fantasy. Let's talk about the biggest respect gainers activities. And we're going to sort of quickly go through these activities because they're fun, but there's not all that much depth to them. Each instance of an activity has 6 ranks, which you'll play through. And then each activity also grants a unique item or boost after completing it, such as certain ones will take down like how much clothes cost, certain ones will give you specific weapons, lessen how much damage you take, stuff like that. So the first activity we're going to talk about is Mayhem, which is self-explanatory. Destroy shit with specific things they give you.
Yeah.
Fun enough.
It's a good time if you just want to blow stuff up most of the time. It's obviously not very in-depth. They just equip you with nice weapons or a nice vehicle, and your point is to destroy as much as possible and do as much property and human damage as you can.
The biggest issue I have with Mayhem, I have the same issue with another one that we'll talk about. Whether or not you succeed in Mayhem usually has to do with the car spawns of the NPCs. Because you're trying to destroy property, and there's a specific area you have to destroy it in. And depending on how well the traffic is spawning in that area could change whether or not you succeed.
I do think they boost the spawns while you're playing the activity, though. Because if you really think about it, there's way more NPCs walking around in more vehicles than at any other time in the game.
And there is other stuff to destroy. Fences, tables. There's a lot of other clutter that you can destroy and you'll get money for.
Just a garbage bag. Just shoot a garbage bag and then you'll get like $25. And also, they do put a price tag on human life. If you kill somebody in Mayhem, I think it's like $500. That's all you're worth is $500.
There's that cynicism again. Number 2, Hitman. These are in no particular order.
Yeah, this one is you'll be given a random list of people, and they'll spawn in different areas in the map. Usually, it's just going to tell you description and like what area of the map they'll be in, and then when you get close, your mini map will show a little symbol for where they're at. And they're usually dressed in unique-ish clothes and look kind of unique.
And it's a fun enough little combination of exploration and combat. Go to the world, go to a specific location. Maybe you'll see a location you've never seen before, and focus more on the NPCs than you normally would. It's sort of another part of it.
Usually, also, your target gets a boost to their health than most NPCs, which... I mean, I think that's good so that you don't just, like, drive right into them, run them over immediately. You don't even look at the environment or look at the NPC.
And we'll keep going because we got a lot of these to go through. That is one thing that Saints Row 2 does so well, is giving you a varied world, varied tools, diverse activities, and things to do in this world. When I said that this game holds the blueprint for how to make a good open world game, this is what I'm talking about. The diversity of the activities and using the game's somewhat finicky main gameplay loops in all kinds of different unique ways to create fun and interesting gameplay. So we're going to go into number 3, where they use the ragdoll system to create an extremely fun minigame.
I have to say this is probably my least favorite because it doesn't actually boost the NPC spawns and vehicle spawns, yet it's so reliant on vehicle spawns.
Yes, heavily dependent on vehicle spawns. That's another big problem. Or that's the big problem with insurance fraud. It has you just hit both the triggers and you go into a ragdoll, and then you're just hitting vehicles and running into things.
Except you get kind of more control with your ragdoll. You can actually, like, pivot while ragdolling in turn. It's kind of interesting. It kind of makes it look like you slide across the ground.
Yes.
It's really goofy. It makes no sense. But at the same time, it is fun. Even though it's my least favorite, it is a fun way to utilize those mechanics, and it's a good time.
And I will say, Hitman isn't really improved by it that much. Both Insurance Fraud and Mayhem are very fun in co-op and does make the experience a little better, especially Insurance Fraud.
Yeah, you just have your friend drive a car and repeatedly run you over.
Next up, we got Crowd Control, and this one is fun. This one uses their melee combat system.
It can use their shooting system if you get the guns.
Doesn't very
specific
often,
areas.
But
it all depends. And then their human shield and throwing people. Yeah, at any time if you turn someone into a human shield, you can click a button and outright throw them.
Yes.
And by the way, there's a cheat called low gravity, or you can get milk bones as another cheat that makes you super strong. If you throw somebody with either of those cheats on, they will fly into the atmosphere.
And Crowd Control has you protecting a celebrity from crazed fans.
Yes.
And they're just like...
I mean, they're called crazed fans, but at this point, you might as well call them organized assassins.
They're just running up with, like, knives and most often baseball bats.
Yeah, baseball bats, knives. Sometimes they'll just punch, but that's actually more rare than them pulling out a legit weapon.
Your goal is to kill them in the most extravagant way possible, basically.
Yeah. You don't actually need to kill them. There is a way to not kill them, usually.
Yeah, if you just beat the crap out of them, they'll just run away.
Or you can throw them into the back of a SWAT car.
Yes, there's a number
way less interesting.
There's a number of contextual things you can throw them into, like a group of cops where if you throw them into it, they just immediately unload on them.
Yeah, or beat the hell out of them.
Yeah, there's a group of construction workers with jackhammers that do the same thing, but with their jackhammers.
You can throw them underneath a helicopter that's hovering, and they'll fly up into the blades and be turned into liquid.
It's like a bulldozer that smashes them. The goal of this whole thing, or where the difficulty comes from in the gameplay, is the fact that if the celebrity gets overwhelmed by people, you'll fail. And there's so many of these crazed fans coming in the later sections that you have to stop throwing them and just start wailing on them with the bat and then throw a couple. And you're trying to hit a certain amount of, I think it's money that you make for killing them in different ways. The more extravagant things you throw them into rather than hitting with the bats makes more money. And so there's a nice little balance there. And that's a really fun way of utilizing that throwing mechanic.
You can throw them into an airplane turbine also.
And it's a lot of fun in co-op.
Yeah. There's a baggage checkout area that for some reason also turns them to liquid, and I have no clue why.
X-rays for some reason.
Yes, X-rays just burn them up. But
because we're going to talk about Fight Club now, which also utilizes.
Oh, don't talk about Fight Club.
First rule. Oh no, I broke the first rule.
Uh-oh.
Fucking,
we're gonna have to whoop your ass now.
What is his name? Edward Norton's gonna come beat my ass. I don't even know if that's the right guy. The guy that played Hulk, was he in Fight Club?
I have no clue.
It's a good movie. You should watch it.
I'll be honest.
Fight Club's exactly what it sounds like. Go into the octagon, go into a ring, and all fist fighting. Although they will throw in trash cans and
and you can pick up objects,
weapons.
Except instead of just knocking out or getting someone to tap, you outright break their necks every time, which is kind of ridiculous and kind of messed up.
So you have to beat them down until you can perform a finisher, which is there's contextual, and they won't die unless you perform the finisher. There's like a contextual button prompt after they go down. After a few seconds, they'll get back up. And then you hit the contextual button prompt, and then you got quick time events. And as you can see from the footage here, it is extremely glitchy, or at least it was for me when you do the takedowns. And that sucks, but overall, with the decent melee combat system, it's a decent amount of fun. Although I will say, when a guy is just smashing your head in with a cinder block, and every time you get up and then he hits you immediately again. Yeah. But it breaks eventually, and then you can get up. And this is another one that's a lot of fun in co-op.
Yeah. And
I'll also say it's interesting. You'll get like 4 people in the ring, and even the enemies will fight each other, which I like.
But I don't know. I usually take them all out. I make sure I do.
Yeah. But that was enough talking about Fight Club. We really shouldn't have talked about it in general. The next one, we got one we were talking about earlier.
This one is the best to roleplay while playing.
Cream of the crop here. Snatch, which has you doing some freelance pimping.
One of the stories, practically, because sometimes these activities have a little intro where you talk to somebody.
Most of them do.
Yeah, most of them do. One of them, though, you are outright working as a freelance pimp for an Asian massage parlor. And you have to go around finding hoes, outright
pimps.
Called hoes, yeah. And either some of them don't have anybody around, but sometimes they do. A lot of the time, especially in later levels, you have gangsters waiting around them.
And gameplay-wise, it's a combination of driving and
shooting.
Combat.
Yeah. And then there is occasional times where your hose gets stolen and you have to chase down a car and disable it to get your hose back. You gotta make sure not to run over any hose.
Yeah, you can't be killing your hose.
It's one of the best activities to roleplay this game.
Yeah, with your buddy, just be talking like pimps.
Oh, it's a good time.
It is a good time, and like you said, sometimes they have people defending them, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're in vehicles that you have to stop, and you have to stop the vehicle without killing the hoe.
Yeah, and then you have the police notoriety bar filling up most of the time during this.
You know who has our respect? Who? Women.
Us. Hey, I ain't calling all ladies hoes. It's just these specific ladies are literally working as hoes.
Yeah, they're literally prostitutes.
Yeah, it's not some random lady on the street.
And another game mode, a very different game mode that still combines driving and shooting, and having a limited time is Fuzz.
Oh, this one is just hilarious. The commentary happening is so great.
So you are posing as police officers for a show that's basically a parody of Cops. Yeah. And you just have to do the most ridiculous things to people for petty crimes, like killing someone with a chainsaw for littering. Plenty of different goofy crimes and criminals.
And not only that, but randomly you'll get called up. For some reason, this is the worst to fight. Not like it sucks to fight them. I mean, like, they're the most armed. is eco-terrorists,
With the flamethrowers?
flamethrowers, and RPGs occasionally.
What about the steroid guys that will just punch you into oblivion?
Yeah, you'll randomly go by a almost like a food truck.
Yeah, it's a van selling steroids.
Yeah.
There's just a huge line of them.
And I think they have the Milk Bones cheat, practically.
Right.
That's what Milk Bones does, that cheat. You're practically on steroids.
And as, from a pure gameplay perspective, it's really good because it offers, or you have to use different
Weapons.
weapons or just methods of killing people. Like, it'll tell you, we have enough footage of people getting hit by cars. That's the one I see the most often.
I think I've one time had him say that about chainsaws. We have enough footage of people getting killed by chainsaws.
And it's fun. Other cops will join you.
Yeah, randomly. It's just like, oh yeah, that person stole a purse, so let's join him in murdering this person.
Yeah, just another unique activity that uses the mechanics in a different way. And speaking of over-the-top violence, we get to heli assault, which is basically just mayhem with a helicopter.
Now, no, they sometimes have specific targets, I believe, but I kind of don't get the point of this one, because already within the game, like in the campaign, you already have plenty of missions that are very similar to this, where you have to worry about either protecting your guy down on the ground or taking out drug ops from other gangs. In this game mode, though, you practically are doing, or this activity, you're doing the exact same thing that you would be doing in the campaign.
I feel like you only do it a handful of times. I feel like it's not quite as much as you're thinking.
It might not be as much as I'm thinking.
Most of the
It's still
activities are completely separate from the campaign.
Yeah. Whereas this one is kind of just playing more of the helicopter missions of the campaign.
Right.
Where you're the one flying, that is.
Still can be a good time, for sure.
Yeah, it can. Even though I have criticism on this stuff, most of the stuff, including insurance fraud, my least favorite, is still a great time. Because it's hilarious most of the time.
Speaking of hilarious, one activity that makes me question the fact that I said this game is witty and not just toilet humor.
Yeah.
Is Septic Avenger, which has you driving, which is still great. I actually think it's hilarious. Has you driving a septic truck and trying to cause as much property damage by shooting shit out of it.
Similar to Mayhem in the goal, except...
But the context.
Using the septic truck, which I think is even called the Septic Avenger. Use that thing, and what's kind of strange is, like, say you're spraying on a car. It will disable the car at a certain point. It won't blow up, but it'll disable the car.
Hey, enough shit will do it.
Yeah. I think, though, that where it's a little different is you can't just outright get rid of your opposition, like, instantly.
Right, true.
And then for 2, I think the truck is being operated by someone else. You're just operating the spray nozzle as it moves around on rails. Which, I mean, it's a pretty good thing if you're not playing co-op.
And a funny thing is that the Septic Avenger is one of the enemies in Fuzz.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
That's pretty. And continuing with vehicle missions, demolition derbies, which are exactly as they sound.
They're amazing, and they unlock specific vehicles at the end.
And
they're really great.
Unique customization. They have unique customization options too, don't they?
Yeah, as you play, you earn kind of like points towards your vehicle customization, and you can choose more armor, I think more speed, and more damage that you deal when you run into somebody. Practically the goal is to make a certain amount of money, which is judged by the amount of cars you destroy, without getting blown up, which...
Yeah, most of the activities use like a point system that's just uses money as
points. But towards the later levels of this mission, it can actually be really difficult because the other cars might take out enough of the other opponents that you don't make enough money, or you're just completely screwed.
Yeah, I remember
the last car.
I remember even in co-op we were struggling a little bit with it.
I actually kind of wonder if it's harder in co-op, because I had an easy time when I played as a child.
And I think it feels reasonably difficult. It's
Yeah.
not like it doesn't feel unfair.
It's not like insurance fraud.
Yeah.
I swear, some of the
Or it's
higher levels, I can't even get past level 1 in some of these. In some of the areas, it asks you to go first.
Right, and it's just because of those vehicle spawns, sadly.
Yeah, or there's just not high enough stuff to jump off of.
Chop Shop, very similar to Hitman.
Yeah, look for specific cars, steal them, bring them back.
Although I will say with this mission type, more often than not, I just would randomly steal a car, and it would happen to be a Chop Shop car, and then I'd just take it to the Chop Shop. Which is
but it's
fine.
Not really, it's not an issue that you accidentally select the wrong car, and then it starts a Chop Shop mission when you're trying to do something else, unless you have to actually go get the list of Chop Shop cars, like in the Hitman mission, before it will even activate. So you don't have to worry until you check the list first before it starts a mission when you accidentally grab that car. Going to another thing about cars, is racing.
Which is one thing that is not very improved by co-op, I don't think.
No, not really. Unless you just want to make fun of your friend because you're beating them.
Right, it's not made any worse because you guys still get to race against each other. It's
practically like you're already, like, the AIs already drive chaotically enough for it to almost be like they're other players at that point.
Most of the races I did, though,
smart.
Most of the races I did, though, were just like time trial stuff.
Oh, there is time trial races and races against AI cars. Well, I don't really like the time trials in a lot of games as much as racing against an opponent, but sometimes it's okay. Not too much to explain about racing, except it doesn't follow the activity ranks of 6 like the other activities.
Yeah, it's got bronze, silver, and gold, right?
Yeah.
And I will say I did a helicopter race, and that was the most boring thing.
Oh, yeah.
The helicopters are very slow, which...
But at the same time, I mean, that's not a bad thing about the helicopters. It's just the racing with them is kind of boring. Drug trafficking is the next activity. I remember one of them, you were specifically delivering black tar heroin to an airport, too.
Gameplay-wise, this just has you...
riding in a car,
right,
and shooting at both police and other gangsters,
and protecting the drug dealer as they drive around, getting their drugs to wherever they need, and then at the end they go home.
Sometimes the drug dealer will get out of the car and deal drugs, and you have to protect them. There is some, I believe it was one of them specifically, where you drive across most of the map, but they don't get out of the car. And that one's just people chasing after you, and you're delivering them to the airport.
This is probably my least favorite one. It's fine.
Yeah, it's kind of just like riding in a car shooting.
Yeah.
It's just shooting on rails.
But again, I don't know, I think closing off certain sections of the gameplay like this, like making it mainly focused on driving and shooting, or just setting parameters on the gameplay is a good way at making unique activities and letting people experience everything your game truly has to offer.
But just like with Heli Assault, this one is actually very heavily used in campaign missions, where you're locked in a car, protecting the car. You even actually outright do a mission where somebody on your gang is hopping out and selling drugs.
Pierce, I think.
Yeah. But this one, I don't know. It's still a good time, especially in co-op, because oftentimes somebody accidentally shoots a drug dealer.
Right. Luckily, you can revive the drug dealer.
Yeah.
Which is very needed and very thankful to have. And lastly, what we got, Nate?
Trailblazing.
So tell me about the project.
Well, we're looking to do a follow-up to our blockbuster documentary, Skeeters on Fire, which really captured the youth market. What I'm imagining is something edgy, something urban, something I like to call Bangers on Fire. See, it's about...
I'm in.
Really? Ha! Well, most people have some questions about the safety of the...
I just want to light stuff on fire. Don't have to sell me.
Okay, let's just get you registered with the union, and we'll have you running around in a flame suit in no time.
Which is, lighting yourself on fire and driving a four-wheeler through crowds of people and through an obstacle area practically, and try and keep the flame going as long as possible. But you're wearing a flame suit and everything, so it looks like a stunt driver almost.
And you're also trying to blow up as much stuff as possible.
Yeah. When you run into something, it blows up if it's like a car or anything like that, or a gas station. But you also, I think, get points for just hitting people.
Yeah, and it's like a time trial thing, and you get extra time for whatever you blow up.
Yeah. And also if you hit anything that keeps the flame going on you, because I believe there's specific barrels.
And this is another thing where it's fine in co-op, but co-op does not add anything to it.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
The co-op partner is just on the back of the four-wheeler throwing Molotovs. All of these activities, by doing the different ones and some other smaller things, you can gain respect. And by filling up that respect bar...
You know what?
You will...
I respect that.
By filling up the respect bar, you will unlock the new campaign missions.
And another way to get respect in this game is through customization.
No. That customization increases your style, Nate.
Which gives you respect.
Your style gives you more... Your style increases the amount of respect you gain from activities.
But it still leads to more respect.
Yes. And an interesting thing... We're going to get into customization now. But an interesting thing about the style system is in regards to your clothing, not only do you have to buy new clothing, but eventually, if you wear the same clothing, you will lose that respect bonus. You have to change clothing to continue to have that respect bonus. You have to keep changing outfits. And the way you could tell that you've lost that bonus is people, when you're walking around, will be like, that's a ratty old outfit or something. When's the last time you changed clothes? Shit like that.
Well, starting, like, the very beginning thing that you're going to do with customization is your character. That one's not really going to do anything with your respect.
No, that doesn't affect respect at all. But there's
character customization in this game is hilarious. You can run around with moobs.
And not only is it hilarious, but it's detailed. Like, you have a lot of customization options.
Yeah.
I mean, especially for the time, like, compared to Cyberpunk. And I mean, there's even stuff it does that Cyberpunk doesn't do, like being able to choose your facial expression or your...
like running around with moobs.
You can do that in Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I know you can in Cyberpunk.
You get a specific compliment and intimidate type thing, whatever it is. The boss is fully voiced through the entire campaign, and all 6 different voice actors will play him. And each one gives a different vibe to everything. I play usually with the Cockney British guy. There's also a black dude.
Yeah, practically that's
the
only real way to explain that.
A white dude.
Yeah, black dude, a white dude, and a British dude.
Yeah. And then American white dude. American black guy.
Yeah. And then
there's I believe there's black female, white female, and a Hispanic female.
No British female?
No, it's Hispanic.
And no Hispanic male. What's up with that?
There's 6 voice actors. That's
wow, Volition. I can't believe that bigots wouldn't make more voices spend those thousands of dollars on good voice acting. Wow.
I can't believe this game about rap from the 90s isn't more respectful to women.
Oh, wow. But that is pretty impressive that they would actually voice act
6 whole voice actors.
Yeah, 6 different voice actors.
They're all pretty good from what I've experienced. I've experienced all 3 male voices at different times.
The British guy just doesn't fit in at
I think he fits fine. I think he works.
Not with everybody else. Because sounds like
I think he works.
He rather, instead of him being like gangster about to go invade someplace, he sounds like an outright British spy about to set up a scheme or a plot.
He reminds me of Butcher from The Boys. 100% Butcher.
Yeah, but he's not quite to the level of a gangster. He's like literally smart enough and skilled enough to be a full-on spec ops unit.
But you could easily turn that character. You could easily take Carl Urban's portrayal of that character and turn him into a gangster.
You know what? Here's a challenge for all you in Hollywood. Hire Carl Urban as a gangster in the U.S. in 90s gangster movie,
And
90s based
Is he
setting.
going to use a Cockney voice? He's from
Yes.
freaking New Zealand.
Yeah, do it.
All right. Saints Row, the movie with Carl Urban.
And it's just him playing Butcher, but as a gangster. And
Who would play Johnny Gat?
is Johnny Gat Asian? I swear to you, he looks Asian
In
in the
Saints Row
second
3,
game.
especially. In Saints
Oh,
Row
in
3,
Saints
he
Row
even looks
3?
Asian.
But at the same time, he doesn't, like... I think he's voiced by a white dude. Should we talk about clothing now?
Yes. Moving on from all the
Clothing.
character customization.
Oh yeah, you can make green dudes.
You can make green dudes, purple dudes.
My bad. Forgot to mention the range of colors you can choose.
You can have weird mustaches.
You can look
and-
like the Joker running around if you felt like it.
Yeah, there's a very wide amount of options for character customization in this game, which especially at the time, for the time, is very impressive.
Yeah.
Clothes and vehicles also have this very good level of customization.
And this is going to be the style bonus
Yes.
type stuff, where you're going to want to wear... It really is kind of weird. It's practically any changes you make to your clothing adds some bonus.
Yeah.
And same with the vehicle. Say you already grab a outright Lamborghini-looking car, and it already has gold rims, already has perfect paint and
You can buy a
everything.
cheaper car and still
Literally, just changing the paint from whatever color it was gives you some style. Changing the rims, even if they're already the best rims, gives you style bonus.
But see, the idea isn't to get the best stuff, it's to constantly be changing and customizing your stuff, which is, again, a great method of pushing players to utilize and
everything that the game has to offer.
Yeah.
And the clothing, it depends on the selection of clothing. Like, at the main places... It actually seems like a kind of small selection of clothes at the main stores, but then the moment you go to the first, costume store, practically, all of a sudden, there's all these weird, crazy outfits, and then you unlock outfits sometimes, too.
It may feel at first like there isn't that much of a variety, but that's because there's lots of different specific stores. Some that there's only a single version of.
Yeah, like
that
leather
have
and lace.
Clothes. Yeah, like the ones in the mall.
Or there's a costume shop at the Greek place.
Yeah, there's multiple gift shops. There's a
Yeah.
gift shop at the Greek place, the marina. There are multiple.
And I think
gift
they have
shops.
different outfits between the two.
The college area has.
Oh
a gift
yeah,
shop.
I forgot about that. They've got quite a lot. I think that the mascot for the college is the Skeeters. Yeah, you outright can buy their mascot
God.
head and run around with this giant cartoonish mosquito head on.
And then even further than just the options of what articles of clothing you want to wear, which there's lots of different slots as well. You've got like hats, jackets, undershirts, overshirts, fucking
Underwear.
pants, underwear, socks. Lots of customization options in the clothing, but even within each article of clothing itself, you have customization options. Each clothing has 3 different colors, which you can change to whatever you want. And there's a wide palette of colors to choose from. That works with the hair as well. We didn't really touch on that. And there's also stuff that I haven't seen in like any other game, which is, do you want your shirt unbuttoned, buttoned, tucked in, not tucked in?
Yeah.
You want your jacket closed, open? You can wear your hat sideways or to the back or to the right. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. Vehicle customization, I really like the vehicle customization. I like the things you can make with it.
I know a lot of people who play games more casually that only ever played Saints Row 2 because of the vehicle customization. Like that's
My
the
brother
main
used to
thing
do
they
that.
play.
He'd outright hop on Saints Row 2, just to make a nice car, drive around for a little bit, and then he'd be done.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's times where I'll get like hyper fixated on just trying to customize a car I see and then take it to my garage real quick.
Yeah.
And my actual garage in the game has so many cars saved, it's ridiculous. I actually even hunted out the unique kinds of police cars and brought them over. Which there's unique kinds of police cars. That's another thing that they do where things get unique. I mean, this is the same model of car. It's just got unique decal that you can't change, which is pretty cool.
And you can also get hydraulics and spinners.
Yeah. I always hook up with the spinners, but you can only have hydraulics or nitrous because they use the same button, which
hydraulics
is actually the stick,
time,
pressing the stick.
Hydraulics every time.
No,
I hate
nitrous, so that I can outpace you every time.
I hate that nitrous.
But the vehicles can be customized from the like wheel size, wheel width, for some cars, the profile of the wheel, so that you could make it super low and just have a giant spinner, and then
just allowing you to do whatever you want. The
types of metals that you want your trim and your why am I spacing on it? The spinner and the rim to look like, then the overall different kinds of paint, which is actually really surprising, the amount of reflections that they're able to do.
True, in a game that old?
Yeah, because if you choose a paint that's super
glossy,
reflective, glossy. I think the most reflective they call pearlescent or something. You can actually see, if somebody walks by, the reflection of them. I mean, it's not like a perfect reflection or anything. It's not like a mirror, but that's surprising in general for a game like this.
Yeah.
And you can customize the interior with its color, the window tint. Some have decals, spinners, the exhaust, grill, hood, roof, side skirt, mirrors, all sorts of things. You can customize so much of the car.
And I will say the overall, usually there's only like 2 or 3 options on each of those.
Yeah, well,
but that's still
depends. When it comes to color, there's like tons, but
the like
and
specific...
then the rims, because usually you can use any kind of rims for any kind of car for the most part. I think there might be certain ones where
like
it's
the
different.
APC. I don't think you could put.
Yeah, I don't think
I could be wrong.
Customize the APC. No, you can. I think I made a red one time.
There's a number of different cribs, homes you can buy, apartments.
Yeah,
and the customization for this is fine. Your main crib will customize itself and slowly evolve as the campaign goes along, which I do like that.
And then your very first one that you actually buy is an outright basement.
Yeah.
You start with a basement under a ratty-looking house.
Yeah.
Then at a certain point, you're buying a whole penthouse.
And then you could customize a handful, like 4 different things in each building. And
stripper poles.
Overall, the customization isn't really customization. It's just style upgrades.
Yeah, you just buy it, and then a little bit of your house looks different, but there's nothing specific other than just you bought the next tier of style for your house.
Yeah. Sometimes I will admit I would keep like the grand piano instead of the stripper pole because I'm a pretentious
because you're classy.
Bastard. Yeah, there we go. I'm classy. I'm too pretentious to put a stripper pole in my house.
Classy, and you said pretentious. And even though you buy the crib, it's like your penthouse. You have all these gangsters from your gang just chilling at your house.
I like that, though.
I mean, it is cool. And, seeing the gang life, that makes sense. There's actually been instances where, like, a whole neighborhood is just, like, stacked to the brim with people of the same gang living in every single room of their house.
And then every crib gets a number of different things you can access, like your wardrobe, your weapon stash,
your bank. Well, it's like a safe, practically.
You get
your bank account.
Newspaper clippings allow you to play previous missions, and you can also, in your main crib, you can customize the actual last form of customization, you can customize your gang members. There's a handful of different preset outfits for your gang members.
And what cars they drive.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of different cars you can choose from.
Yeah.
That was a game changer when I had taken over a lot of the city and I changed all their cars to the fastest cars, and it was like anywhere I went, I could just jump in the freaking gang car that was super fast.
And then
helped a lot.
Beyond that, I mean, you want your gang to look like ninjas, you can do that. You want them to look like 80s hip-hop, you can do that.
Put them in suits and body armor, that's what mine were the whole time.
Bodyguards, where they're wearing a mix of the Altor, like, mercenary body armor, and then, like, almost like celebrity Secret Service type bodyguards.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But, I mean, that is a limited amount of selections.
But
like,
it's just
it's
nice
not
that
like
it's
you
there.
can customize really deeply the outfits of a bunch of them. That'd be kind of unrealistic anyways of an ask.
But yeah, with all that customization is what really set this game apart from GTA, you know, as well as the diverse, the huge amount of different things you can do in the game world. Not really customization, but playing into that power fantasy and that same sort of appeal that customization has. We have the real estate system.
Yeah.
And that goes along with cribs, which we talked about you can buy. And in your crib, as Nate was saying, you have a bank which gives you money certain intervals of time depending on the businesses you own.
Yeah. And the amount will shoot up super high with a lot of businesses.
You can only buy businesses in turf that you've already claimed, though, right?
Yes. You can only buy it in turf that you've claimed.
And that comes from campaign missions, correct?
Yeah. So as you play through the campaign, you'll unlock certain parts of the city to be your gang's turf, and you can buy businesses and cribs within that area. Maybe you might be able to buy cribs outside your turf. I can't quite remember.
You can buy cribs outside your turf, but that's the only thing you can buy, not businesses.
And you'll start seeing your own gang spawn there rather than the enemy gangs.
And when you buy the business, a lot of the time you'll see your gang guarding the door.
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, a fine real estate system that adds a lot to the game.
Yeah, you want to make sure you can customize things for the rest of the game. Just keep buying real estate, and then you will have so much money just in a few minutes.
So there's a number of very small diversions, is what the game calls them, which is just small activities that you don't need to complete for full completion of the game, but are fun to do. And again, when you look at both the activities and the list of diversions, and just how different everything is, it's so impressive how the breadth of things that we have. So when it comes to diversions, we're just gonna shoot through them real quick.
Yeah.
We talked about stunt jumps. We talked about barnstorming is doing what exactly with planes?
Flying a plane under a bridge or some similar type structure. And you can... There's actually another way to gain respect. I mean, barnstorming gives you respect, but if you... And there's a list of areas that count as like a barnstorming thing, kind of like stunt jumps. But if you fly it in sideways, you actually get even more respect from a whole nother thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You have secret areas, tons of secret areas you can find throughout the game, like islands off the coast. When jumping out of a plane, you could set a base jumping destination, which is just an area that you will try to
land in with the
parachute for some respect. You can rob stores, which, you know, it doesn't pay very much, but it adds to that fantasy, to that experience that you're looking for with this gang lifestyle.
Yeah.
Hostage diversions. So anytime hostage diversions, it's when you get in a car with someone in the passenger seat, you could start a hostage diversion.
Yeah.
And then you have to drive quick
away
enough
from the police. It'll immediately give you 3 stars, and then you have to try to get away.
And you have to stay away from the police as well as stay fast enough to keep the hostage from getting out long enough, and then you'll get some money. You can mug people, because why not? Tagging.
Oh, yes.
That's something where they added, like, such a simple little mini-game there that is satisfying. I don't know why moving that right stick up and down to shake the can is
Yeah.
so satisfying. But tagging is just fun to do. Another thing is, depending on what gang signed you're tagging over, you'll get notoriety for that gang. And
Yeah, so you have to try to do it real quick before that gang shows up to stop you.
But if you do it out of the outline too much, you'll lose.
Yeah, you'll have to restart at that point.
And then there's a number of jobs you can do. EMT, driving an ambulance, picking people up, taking them to the hospital. Can be decently fun. Fireman has you going to put out fires with your fire hose. Works similar to the Septic Avenger, but it's water instead of shit. That can be a lot of fun. Taxi driver, picking up people, dropping them off. Make a little bit of money, sort of like racing.
Tow truck, which that's pretty self-explanatory. Show up, grab a car, take off with it. That one gets really wonky, though, because sometimes the mass of the car behind you will shake the back of your car, and if you pick up too long of a car, sometimes your back end will lift up for some weird reason.
Yeah.
But it's still fun.
Not if you pick it up right.
No, I don't think there's a different way. Now, this one, isn't this an activity? Zombie Uprising? Because there's 6 levels of it.
It's just diversion. It says
That's
so on the
weird.
wiki.
That is really weird because
The wikis are never wrong, of course.
Well,
They
the
always are.
format of it is that of an activity where you do 6 different levels of it, and it has that weird, like, you've completed this screen pop up.
Explain Zombie Rising to the people. Zombie Uprising to the people, Nate.
So, your character goes up to a TV,
yeah.
and you can select to play a game called Zombie Uprising,
And
you play a guy in a wife beater with a mullet and sunglasses, and are trying to protect a bunch of ladies as your companions from the zombies, and trying to survive as many waves as possible.
And other than that, we got blackjack and poker, good old card games, played just as you expect them to. You can't win very much money, but still can be fun.
This one's real fun, this next one.
Hoeing is basically the hot coffee minigame from San Andreas, but it actually real and not taken out of the game. Although it doesn't show anything, it's behind
a door, and then you just hear awkward noises. I used to have to hide this one.
It is hilarious though when you mess up, you get like pain noises, which I liked.
Yeah.
Fun enough. Shrieking, I actually could not figure out how to do, but you can get completely naked and just run naked, and the police will try to catch you.
It will leave like a digital censorship like they would do on TV back in like early 2000s. It's really funny looking. It'll do that same digital censorship when making a character, if you're like a guy, and then all of a sudden you turn the slider up real quick to make boobs. Before it loads on a brawl, outright the digital censorship will pop up over his chest. It's really goofy.
Escort is just a basic escort mission. Cat and mouse, and then these next two are co-op only diversions. So if with friendly fire on, which is on by default, if you kill your co-op partner, they can choose to revive in either of these diversions. And they're both pretty fun. One's just a basic death match that gives you specific weapons. And we already talked about the problems with some of the weapons in the PvP. But the other one is cat and mouse, which is a lot of fun. A unique co-op gameplay feature that is a lot of fun. One person is driving one of the fastest cars in the game, and the other person is in an attack helicopter. And so the person driving the car is basically in a race. They're trying to go through points as fast as they can, and they gain points for every checkpoint they go through. The person in the attack helicopter, on the other hand, is trying to blow them up to make sure they don't make as much points.
With guided missiles, by the way. Which actually act really well in this game, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, you can really turn them around a whole lot. It's really interesting how well the tracking on the missile works.
And it can be a bitch depending on like where you end up doing
Yeah.
the diversion at.
Where
but
you start the diversion can
while
be
it's
pretty rough.
while it's not balanced, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and beyond that, I think that the uniqueness of different areas of the map and the variety of how the map is really works well with this game mode
Yeah.
because you could do it in an area with a lot of skyscrapers, and that makes a whole different experience than if you do it like a
It is
trailer park.
Much more difficult.
I
the
like it
helicopter
there.
guy.
Yeah. Usually, though, I mean, you could get unlucky and spawn within sight of the helicopter, and the very first missile
Yeah.
can aim right at you.
So we haven't even got into the talking about the campaign missions yet. If you haven't experienced Saints Row 2, you can already see the diversity of its content and just how many unique and different activities it has, how much it wants you to do in its game world, and the fact that it just wants you to have fun in its game world. I want to talk about the campaign, but first we're going to talk about the game's sound. Overall sound effects,
I mean, it
Some of them are-
depends. Explosions can sound kind of cool sometimes, but they don't really have that impactfulness. They don't have a lot of bass.
Yeah.
But now the music, on the other hand,
Yeah.
you get some big step music
Um,
and all sorts of different kinds of music. It actually sounds really good.
Yeah, but the sound effects, I would say very similarly to the graphics, feel a generation behind.
Yeah, especially the guns.
Yeah.
But the
Engines,
cars,
there's some
it depends.
in the
on
fast
car.
cars, man, there's some really bad sounding engines,
Yeah.
and a lot of them you'll hit max speed, but it'll still sound like it's like constantly revving up, and that just bothers me so much for some reason.
Yeah, because you're used to hearing cars make a certain sound when they're speeding up.
It just sounds annoying. But yeah, like you said, the music, the soundtrack, absolutely fantastic. Great big step rap, great 80s on the mix, some good, early 2000s, modern at the time, rock and shit like Paramore. Just overall a kick-ass soundtrack to go with this game. And voice acting.
Fantastic. It's super good for the budget they had, especially. All the main characters sound good. The random NPCs, while they all have annoying voices, which I think is on purpose, they still sound like the quality was pretty good. And then there's NPCs who are uniquely voiced that don't need to be uniquely voiced at all because you see them once and then they're gone. Like the judge during Johnny Gat's trial.
Yeah.
That is a uniquely voiced lady and a unique enemy. Now that I think about it.
And the lawyer.
The
He's
lawyer
not
has a unique voice, but one difference is, though, you can call him up as a homie if you know his number. Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about this. Homies, yeah. If you call somebody, you can get them on your contact list from doing missions, or if you know the right number, it's kind of like cheats.
Yeah.
You type in on the phone, except homies don't count as a cheat if you type it in. But you call them up, they drive up to you.
Girlfriend. Homies don't count as a cheat.
Well, you call them up, they show up, and they'll be one of your followers. And you can actually just whistle at some of your gang members, and they'll fill your follower slots, which you usually have 2 or 3.
Yeah, depending on where you're at in the story, you can have up to 1, 2, or 3 follower slots. And if you have a co-op, if you're playing with somebody in co-ops, they'll take up one of your companion slots. And with all those characters and the villains, I think voice acting is great.
Yeah, and the villains all have pretty good and unique voices and overall seem unique.
And I think that's perfect time to get into the campaign. It's structured into 3 different smaller campaigns for each gang.
You have the Ronin.
Die with some honor.
Which they kind of do something a little bit weird. Its color is yellow.
And they're a gang of Japanese ninjas.
Yeah. And no, samurai, not ninjas. Ronin are samurai.
Okay.
Yeah. Gosh.
Then the Sons of Samity, who are
voodoo.
only the 2 top dogs are into the voodoo.
Where am I?
You are sitting with your betters, my friend. I wanted to see the face of the individual who had caused me so much trouble. So far, I find the experience to be underwhelming.
They all got that pothead, that has way too much incense going all the time and wears a beanie. That's the type of people that this gang is full of. Yeah,
and they're all about the drug trade. They have a specific drug, Loa dust, that is their
which is an opiate
specific thing.
You smoke it out of a light bulb, and it's dust. I mean, I guess heroin's dust sometimes before you melt it.
Yeah, powder.
Yeah, but.
And then the Brotherhood, who are a bunch of, roided up, not necessarily roided up, but, muscle-headed,
a bunch of
white dudes with mullets and trucks.
The shooting stopped. You think it's over?
Your little buddy screamed like a bitch when we trussed him up. How about you, bitch? You gonna scream?
Not just white dudes. Some
rednecks, excuse me.
Yeah, they kind of do seem like rednecks, because they either drive big bulked Jeep or truck, or later monster truck.
One of the main guys is in a rock band, and
yeah,
they have
piercings and tattoos. I think the main dude is Hawaiian though.
Marrow?
Yeah, Marrow, I think, is a
Almost
Hawaiian
called him
dude.
Maestro again.
Maestro. No, Marrow, I think, is a Hawaiian dude.
The campaign starts... for one, while the campaign has recurring characters from the first game, it's definitely not necessary to have played the first game to enjoy this game. Most of the characters are different, and most of the story does not have much to do with the first game.
You'll start out the campaign, though, with the mission of getting out of prison after waking up from a coma from the events of the last game.
You just immediately break out of prison.
Yeah, the moment you wake up from a coma, you meet a guy named Carlos.
Now, I don't want to go through the entire story beat for beat,
but once you get out of prison, very next missions are setting up a base of operations, which becomes your first crib.
And just setting up your gang.
Yeah, and then acquiring all the gang members, which would be Shondi, Pierce, and Carlos.
And Johnny.
And Shondi, Pierce, and Carlos are supposed to be your lieutenants, one focused on each gang. Though...
that kind of changes up.
Yeah, it changes up, though that's how it's supposed to be structured initially.
Yeah, and so after setting up your gang, you get on the quest paths, the 3 different quest paths for each gang. And this choice, I think, is understandable because of their whole play this your way, customize things, do things how you want to idea, the 3 different campaigns. But I think it definitely causes issues with pacing.
Yeah, it can. But I don't necessarily think it's completely bad pacing, because they're not... each fight, while climactic in the story of that gang, overall, it builds up to the main climax in the end.
I agree with that.
Which is kind of interesting as a whole, how it ends up.
I agree with that, but my problem with it is, so, for one, the pacing is controlled by the player, which is fine. But if you play each gang's campaign, completely, if you play through the whole Ronin campaign, then the whole Smetty campaign, then the whole Brotherhood campaign, which is what I did, then by the time you get to that last one, or even the second one, then in the early missions, they're, acting like you're this little gang.
To keep good pacing, play Brotherhood, Sons of Samity, then Ronin.
I felt like
build up each at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like the other way to play it is to play one mission of each gang, and then one mission of each gang. But then I feel like each individual story really suffers pacing-wise. You play your Ronin mission, play your Smetty mission, play your Brotherhood mission. By the time you're done with your Brotherhood mission, you've forgotten what's going on in the Ronin campaign, at least.
Yeah.
And it depends on your schedule and, how often you're playing the game. Those are the pacing problems that any game has. But I think it's exacerbated by the 3 different campaign structure.
Yeah.
The other kind of missions you have are strongholds, which are exactly what they sound like. They're just large gang hideouts, usually large
just show
interiors.
up and then take out a ton of people. But there's usually some scripted events within it, like once you take out specific people, or once you actually do take over the building, they're going to send in a force to retaliate.
Right. You got to steal their money or destroy their casino machines and shit like that. Yeah. Fine little combat gauntlets. But back to the main campaign. Like we said at the beginning, Shondi is the lead of fighting the Sons of Samity. Pierce is the lead of fighting the Ronin. Carlos is the lead of fighting the Brotherhood. But how it sort of ends up working is Shondi is the main character of the Smetty campaign.
Yeah.
Johnny is the main character of the Ronin campaign.
Yeah.
He takes over Pierce.
I can dream, right?
What is it, bitch? I bumped into an old buddy of yours who was looking for you.
Who is it?
You can see for yourself in a few minutes.
You brought him here?
How do you know this arsehole isn't trying to kill me?
And then the main character is the lead on taking over the Brotherhood for the most part.
Well, actually, we're just gonna say spoilers for the entire story from this section on. Should have said it earlier.
if you didn't think that we're gonna go into spoilers earlier, that's kind of your fault.
Right, but
we literally said we're about to talk about the campaign.
But go play the game if what you've heard now sounds enjoyable, like the video, all that good stuff. We're getting into spoilers now. We kind of already did, but just for the very beginning. So,
Carlos gets killed.
Yes, Carlos gets killed very early on in the Brotherhood, in like the third or fourth mission.
And then Pierce and Shondi fill the gap.
Pierce!
And then the main character also makes decisions on his own quite a bit in this area.
Like, I'm gonna go get radioactive material to put in his tattoo gun. He just comes up with that idea out of his ass.
Yeah. I'm gonna go take his girlfriend hostage, lock her in a trunk, and park that car at the monster truck rally this guy is driving the monster truck for. And so he runs his own girlfriend over.
That brings us to one of the things in this campaign where we already talked about in the tone section about how this Saints Row 2 is much more cynical than even GTA, and its characters, especially its main character, not a good person in any way. He is not a relatable.
Not only is he a sociopath, but he's a psychopath, and that's made even more apparent throughout later games where he outright says, "Can we just get back to killing people?" and stuff like that randomly.
But in Saints Row 2, and in some of the later games, we'll get into those when we review those games, instead of being a hero, or like GTA, you have anti-heroes.
Yeah, where they try to be redeemable, even though it usually doesn't work because even within the story, it's like you're still outright evil. Even though Franklin's a cool character as a whole.
He's still a horrible person.
Yeah, he's willing to go be a contract killer.
And the fact that they are trying to get you to sympathize with him is almost like kind of messed up.
But I don't know. I think Franklin's story overall is good, but other characters in GTA 5,
and
they lack that story.
There's the Ludo narrative dissonance of it all, whereas Franklin has also murdered thousands of people, which does not fit
throughout the game.
Maybe not thousands.
Hundreds,
right,
for sure.
Right, at least over 100 throughout the game, which does not fit with the story they're trying to give the character. Whereas the boss, his story completely fits his character.
He doesn't care
the actions
all
of the player.
about human life.
And it's less in Saints Row. It's not about being the hero. It's not about being the anti-hero. It's about being a better and more powerful villain than all of the other villains.
It's about just being better than everybody else.
Yes, and everyone's a piece of shit.
Yeah, and that no one can tame you also, and that becomes a bigger thing towards the end of the game.
And I think while the game is very goofy, and even in the story, it can be a bit goofy, it remains serious a lot of the time. I think the thing is, the villains take everything that's happening
super seriously.
Because it's their business. You know, Shogo, the younger kid of the boss of the Ronin, he doesn't take things quite as seriously, but that's more his character.
And also, there's kind of different themes with each gang, too, in that sense. Like, Shogo is showing a kind of cultural difference that the gangs would have between American gangs and Japanese gangs, where there's this kind of honor in a way with the Japanese gangs.
Shogo has been corrupted by the American
Like, there's
society.
literally a whole part where he's on the phone talking to someone while telling a lady to get on her knees in front of him.
Yeah. And he's all the time telling him to speak English. This is America.
That's messed up. Especially because he knows exactly what that guy was saying. But he kind of took the overall honor-based system that the Japanese gang had and twisted it into an Americanized version where he's using it more about the overall style of that culture rather than actually that culture.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see this disconnect between his dad as the story progresses once you kill his son in just an absolutely terrible way by locking him in a coffin and burying him in a grave.
Get up. Get up.
Please, stop.
Not so fun when you're fighting someone who isn't tied to a chair, is it?
I didn't kill her!
You ordered it.
I'm sorry.
Well, that brings her back, doesn't it? You couldn't even let her have a burial, you fucking piece of shit.
No, please. No. Kill me, but don't do this. Just kill me, damn it! Don't do this!
And that is a very horrifying scene. The reaction, that is one of the places where the reaction of the character or of the villain is extremely realistic.
Yeah.
Like the voice actor does an excellent job there because he genuinely sounds horrified.
But that's what he gets for killing Aisha.
Like, okay, and that brings up a good point where both with Carlos dying and Aisha dying, the game tries to pull on your heartstrings a little, I think. Tries to have some emotional moments and make you sympathize with Johnny and Carlos. And I did not feel that way for either of them.
I sympathize for Aisha because, I mean, she was trying... For one, she's completely left the gang life.
She should have told... When Johnny showed up on her front doorstep, she should have told him to fuck off. That's her problem.
Exactly.
And I don't feel bad for Johnny.
At that point, though, it's more of... Because she still loves somebody who's an outright killer, that she becomes the victim for having let it into her house. And it's only really sympathy for her that should be felt in that scene, because Johnny is still a terrible human being.
That is an interesting theme that I just realized is throughout the entire game. Caring about horrible people brings ruin into your life. We see that with Carlos. well, we see that with Carlos somewhat caring about the boss and trying to, be a part of this gang and help people.
I mean,
we see
Carlos actually wasn't that terrible of a guy. If you follow through the missions, he isn't outright trying to kill any regular people. In the very beginning, he frees a psychopath from prison. That's true,
and joins a gang that he leads.
Yeah,
helps him.
But I mean, like at that point,
he was trying to set up negotiations with Marrow.
Yeah, he's trying to actually work things in a diplomatic way.
But talking about that theme of loving someone who's horrible and it dragging you down and causing bad things, you've got Carlos gets fucked up, Aisha dies, Shogo causes the downfall of his father.
Yeah, but his father was evil.
But his father
was honorable but evil.
And his father wouldn't have... None of that would have happened if his father wouldn't have cared so much about Shogo and let him run the business like that, I feel like. Also, the Brotherhood.
They randomly have a character connect with the Ronin mission. The guy who gives you one of the hit lists is a character throughout the Ronin campaign.
Yeah, the Asian dude?
Yeah, that one Asian dude gets in a sword
He's from the first
fight.
game, too.
Yeah, he's in the first game.
And then the Brotherhood. There's the tattoo artist guy.
Tattoo artist. He does both.
And as well as...
the mechanic on Marrow's car.
Yeah, and the Marrow's girlfriend, well, she's also evil. A piece of shit.
Yeah. She outright is like,
she
why
gets
don't you just
murdered
kill him?
because she's with him. And then you also have another person who's evil, but is completely fucked because of how loyal he is, and that is Mr. Sunshine.
But he's
right-hand man.
He's also super evil. I think
but he does
he threatens to chop off a guy's hands for practically nothing.
But he also gets his ear cut off by the general for failing.
For doing, even though he did everything he could. Yeah. It's messed up. I think overall, the Ronin story, going through that, it's pretty good. It has multiple bosses throughout it. Boss fights don't feel very good in this game.
Yeah, the Ronin bosses are like the most anticlimactic. And like, there's this intense music, and you're just sitting there getting thrown over. Why do they throw you over their shoulder? That's such a goofy way of all the things to do in a sword fight.
They could just
throw him over your shoulder. Yeah, why don't they parry you? That would make more sense.
But
feels very wonky.
That one is just a waiting game until they go into an animation, then you hit them.
Or in co-op, it's just beating the hell out of them and immediately taking them out.
Yeah.
Because you could attack them from multiple angles.
Yeah. And then with Marrow, he's just super tanky. But that fits his character, though, being super tanky.
Well, Marrow, the first fight, he's got the minigun.
Yeah.
And you've got to take cover in different areas. Which, I haven't played it in co-op, but I feel like that would be completely broken in co-op. You can just have one guy stand at one end and have him shoot the minigun, the other guy just shoots him.
Yeah.
Then you have the second fight with Marrow is actually pretty well designed. You are on foot in a coliseum of trucks, and he's in a freaking monster truck, and it's actually it's actually a good time.
Yeah. Well,
I went in with RPG.
Any of the boss fights where the boss is in a car is not as bad. But anytime that the boss is on foot, it's super tanky.
The general
or has
was a fine
weird
boss
mechanics.
Fight. Especially, I think that one would be really good in co-op too, because if he does start driving away and you have to chase him, you can get on the ATV and the other dude can be on the back with an RPG.
Yeah, and then now really good boss fight is Mr. Sunshine.
Mr. Sunshine.
Who has voodoo magic, practically.
Yeah.
But, like, the Ronin, you start fighting Shogo, the son of the leader of a Japanese gang who's expanded to the Americas, wherever Stillwater's at.
Right.
And then, once you kill him, his father is now the main enemy.
Yeah.
And you have to take him out. Pierce starts off as the general, but constantly gets outclassed by the knowledge Shaundi has from just dudes she's hooked up with in the past.
And the general is the leader
everything.
Of the Samedi, and he controls the drug trade, and he's got this very dictator vibe, and then
he's kind of like a Jamaican warlord.
Right, and then his henchman, his right-hand man...
is Mr. Sunshine.
Right, who's like a voodoo master, and this...
Yeah. and kind of mixes both like drugs and voodoo together.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, they like abduct you into their car and they get you high.
That's like halfway through. It's like a little over halfway through, I think.
Well, the very beginning, their introduction, practically like to the main character,
Right.
to the
Okay.
boss.
Okay.
Yeah, like you get a few scenes, but at first, really, you're fighting just some random pothead dude,
Yeah, that's
like
dealing-
Rasta pothead guy dealing low dust
Another
on campus.
Shoddy boss fight
Yeah,
with him.
and you whoop his ass super easy though, and I think that's a
I
point.
died a couple times.
What, you died
Yeah.
to that?
I
whooped
killed
his
Shondi
ass. Oh yeah.
on accident.
Well, that's just a dude Shondi used to hook up with. There's a whole like thing about randomly mentioning,
I will
I
say-
got this info from a guy I used to hook up
I
with.
will say the fact that the one main female character gets all her information from
I
having
think that
sex.
fits though overall the entire theme and vibe, especially with her
Yes.
character.
And because the boss can be a female, that
And then there's Aisha.
supersedes. I don't think that the creators of this game are like sexist people.
No.
I just think they were trying to create this particular
Yeah.
fantasy experience. But yeah,
A random kind of, I don't know, she kind of gives me the vibe of a heroin addict, but
Yeah.
she's just a pothead.
Yeah.
I mean, she does low dust, that's an opiate,
yeah.
but
And Pierce sort of like pops in and out through all the campaigns as just
Yeah.
a guy that gets
and
underappreciated.
immediately
and
in
kind
the
of
Ronin
sucks.
campaign, he comes up with this plan. Johnny Gat just goes, how about we just walk in through the front door
Yeah.
and start blasting people?
Yeah.
And at first it's Johnny that is taking over Pierce's role, and then Shondi randomly hops into the Ronin campaign,
Yeah.
giving info and taking over Pierce's role.
And that is Pierce's role, to get overtaken by people constantly and just
constantly.
get shit on.
Yeah, but then when it comes to the Brotherhood, you have Carlos set up on the job. You try to work out a deal
Not really.
where that was you're trying to work out 50-50 split of the city. Marrow doesn't agree with that and says he wants 70-30.
No, you're wrong. Marrow offers you 20-80 on the city.
20-80.
And your guy says, the 80's mine, right?
Well, no, at a certain point, though, a 50-50
I
split
don't
was
believe so.
mentioned. But,
I think that might have been what Carlos says.
well, at some point, after that deal falls through, then,
I mean, you just constantly war with the Brotherhood and fuck them up.
yeah, Marrow, I can't even remember what he does first. I know that it leads you to putting
He might kidnap someone.
radioactive chemicals in his tattoo ink, which is so convoluted but funny.
And it provides a unique gameplay opportunity, which is something that...
And it only starts burning after he got the full tattoo.
which is something that the campaign does well. The missions are designed well and provide unique gameplay through a lot of the missions, even unique compared to a lot of the activities. You know, we did talk about how there are similar activities. Heli Assault, certain things are similar to things you do in the campaign.
Yeah.
But overall, the campaign offers a lot of varied and unique experiences with a very up and down quality. Like we talked about, the boss fights are a big issue. But each boss fight tries to provide something unique.
Yeah. Well, then, at some point, you move on to his tattoo artist after they kill Carlos by dragging him through the street behind a souped-up truck.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they don't kill Carlos.
You kill Carlos.
Yeah, because there's nothing you could do or...
Supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly. Which, then, this is something that I mentioned, I'd say earlier. You can call Zombie Carlos as a homie. And you see the big bullet hole come exiting out the back of his head. At some point, though, you...
Kidnap Marrow's girlfriend.
Well, that's after you get his tattoo artist, who's also a
rocker.
Yeah, rocker.
He's in a band.
He's in a band,
Guitarist.
and you put his hand over the fireworks
Oh,
nozzle
yeah.
and then hit the button so it burns the fuck out of his hand.
And it's usually all of these horrible things your guys does aren't played for laughs. That's the interesting thing. It's almost always played as
Yeah.
straight.
it's just the ridiculousness talking about it, where it's just like, that's just so goofy, like thinking about it now. But then kidnapping his girlfriend from a bank, putting her into the trunk of a car.
This is another thing. Everything
then
in the brother...
parking that car at the end of a row of cars while Marrow is in a monster truck at a monster truck derby.
Because somehow you
rally.
knew that he was just happened to be at this monster truck rally and
you
how
knew
to
that.
get this car.
You knew that, but there'd be no reason that you would know he'd run over that last car. Because he jumps all of them and lands right on top of the car. And then he doesn't just kill you.
The Brotherhood campaign is very convoluted.
It is.
I'm gonna kill you right here, right now.
No, you're not.
What's this?
Do me a favor. When you check the trunk, just remember you should have offered me something better than 20%.
Like, you hand him the keys to it and you're just like, should have offered me the 80 or something about the percent. And then walks away. And Marrow doesn't kill you the moment he opens up, sees his dead girlfriend.
Well, it's like in the Ronin campaign, which we sort of glossed over. Johnny's girlfriend Aisha gets killed by one of the Ronin, and he's all super sad about it, and pissed.
Then you kill Shogo.
But then after, at her funeral, Shogo shows up trying to shoot them all, and he's just like, he just doesn't have it. He's like, fuck off. I don't want to fight anybody, not today. And again, I said I don't really feel much sympathy for Johnny, but I think that's the same sort of vibe I get from the Marrow thing when she dies.
Yeah. So, like, and in a sense, Shogo should have had this at least certain amount of honor not to interrupt a funeral, too.
That's an interesting point, because it shows that he doesn't even... He's lost his father's ideals so much that Johnny Gat has more honor than he does.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
Well, Johnny purposefully picked up a samurai sword just so he could fight on even ground with somebody else. Also, I think somebody, at some point in a cutscene, deflects 2 bullets with a samurai sword before taking, like, 3 more to the chest. The fact they deflected any was ridiculous. But...
so there is some ridiculousness.
Yeah. Some that's interesting is throughout both the Ronin and the Brotherhood campaigns is, and not in the Samity campaigns, is Vogel, the Ultor CEO.
And we haven't talked about Ultor. Ultor is a massive corporation that sort of is...
They're really in everything.
They overhang the entire map and experience. You see them all around. And you see little hints of them.
When you're looking at the map, you'll know something unique pretty early on. That the map, like different neighborhoods that you own or don't own, will be colored certain ways. A certain neighborhood is all gray. Along with the nuclear plant and the prison island, and that gray area on the main island, though, is where the Saints came from in the first game. And
there's this whole thing
Ultor has bought the entire area.
And gentrified it.
Yeah, gentrified it. And he actually has... Well, actually, we can talk about that a little bit later. But at this point, he's trying to reach hands into as much of everything in Stillwater as he can. Yeah, at this point,
he basically owns the Ronin and the Brotherhood. It has like lots of deals with him.
And Shogo is obviously
being manipulated
by Vogel, whereas Marrow doesn't really realize he's being manipulated and thinks that Vogel's in his pocket.
Yeah.
Whereas Shogo's definitely the one who's obviously on the short end of the stick in that deal.
And it is interesting that the Samedi campaign completely lacks him.
Yeah. But Marrow at some point outright grabs him by the neck and threatens to drop him out of
That's
his
at the
skyscraper
end.
window.
That's towards the end of his campaign.
And throws his door off the hinges because he's so pissed off. It's kind of funny.
And Vogel is your classic slimy scheming corporate CEO.
Yeah, and it actually, he manipulates those two gang leaders really well throughout the...
And even the Saints.
Yeah. The Saints, it's kind of like super indirect. Through the other gangs, he's manipulated the Saints. And then one time, he actually talks to him.
Yeah, he gives... In the Roden campaign, he gives you the information of where
his dad. Yeah. Shogo's dad is.
So after completing all 3 of the gang campaigns, I've taken out all 3 gangs, a new quest marker will open up. The first mission you go to, and it's in that gray area on the mainland you were talking about.
Yeah.
And it has the Ultor symbol. And you may have noticed around the time of this happening, one of the radio stations, Gen X, is changed to Ultor FM because they bought it. And this, combined with Vogel and all of the stuff of Ultor growing and being this sort of background corporation that's taking control of everything, is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because they're pushed to the forefront as the final villain.
You actually don't even realize they're a villain till the very end, for the most part. It's more of just, they've teamed up with this dude when you make it through halfway through 2 of the different campaigns.
Yeah, I think you could definitely assume that Vogel is going to be like the villain, though.
But it's like, until you make it that far through either of those campaigns, you would never really think, oh, this company's just going to turn into the big villain.
That's true. So the first...
You also get the cutscene.
That's the first mission.
Yeah.
The first mission is only a cutscene, which is an interesting enough cutscene where Vogel talks to the shareholders about his whole plan, which was to basically let the Saints rise and take out all the other gangs for them.
Yeah, and lower property values in the middle of it. Actually, his original plan was let them kill themselves and then just rush in at the very end and then take it over and buy up all the cheaper property that's been shot up by gang fighting.
And then gentrify it, make it
Well, I mean,
fancier.
some of it wouldn't even need that. Like, that includes the skyscraper area across the bridge and everything.
But that's what he was talking about, because he shows this whole video about, like, we'll be a clean, wonderful city.
What's kind of funny is it's, like, depictions of gangsters.
Yeah.
Also, it's kind of hilarious.
As many of you know, the restoration of Saints Row was a tremendous success, but that was just the beginning of what Ultor has in mind for Stillwater. This is Shivington. Once a pristine set of tenement homes, this neighborhood has devolved into a dangerous ghetto filled with undesirables such as these. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, ugly buildings, unwashed masses, what the hell is Ultor thinking? My friends, we are thinking about the future. Picture this, glass towers, clean streets, and no one below the poverty line trying to wash your car. Impossible? For a lesser company, maybe. Now, I'm not here to make idle promises or vague predictions. No offense to all of you politicians out there. No, I'm here to show you how we're going to do it. Now, obviously, before we can remodel Shivington, we need to own the land. So how do we do that? By directing the gangs towards Sunnyvale. Not only are we lowering the number of our detractors, we are lowering the property value as well, which means when we buy the land, the savings get passed on to you, the stockholders. The gangs cripple each other. We direct funds to the Stillwater Police Department, they increase police presence, and pretty soon, all those nasty little gangbangers are gone. Crime stops, property value goes up, and now your population looks like this.
And so we're shown that, and then the next mission is Ultor raiding and, like, attacking, like,
trying to take out the boss
on the Saints.
Yeah, using a full paramilitary SWAT team.
And there's only, like, one more mission after. There's 2 more missions after that.
Yeah. And then after that, he is able to trick the Saints into thinking that he will be at a yacht during a big yacht party. And he gets the boss to go kill all of the shareholders so that because they disapproved of his plan, so that he can do whatever he wants.
It's kind of funny, though. He really fucked himself over. He should have listened to the shareholders, because the shareholders' whole thing is that they think the Saints are too dangerous at this point, and they've gained too much control, which is completely right.
Yeah.
And you know that as the boss. And so yeah, you got this mission, which that brings something up. In this mission and in one of the final Ronin mission, there is a gameplay section where you drive a jet ski while an attack helicopter shoots missiles at you.
Target lock missiles.
Awful. It's
I don't know.
Awful.
I gotta say, the first time I played it, I think I went right there without any issue. But I think some kind of problem happened. If it respawned me
at the jet ski, if it respawned me when I was on the jet ski, that would be fine. But it respawns me at the beginning of the mission. I have to get in my car, drive to the jet ski, and then drive the jet ski.
Yeah. Then, towards the end, this even gets a little bit more convoluted and goofy, now that I think about it. You finally are going after Vogel, and you fly an attack helicopter up, and he has actual anti-air missiles.
Yeah.
And makes him seem more like a movie villain in a way.
Super villain?
Yeah, super villain.
Which is something that is a hint for the future of Saints Row.
And it gets a pretty cool cutscene when you get to the top of the skyscraper of the boss hopping out of a helicopter after barely tilting it forward towards the window. Yeah. And then jumping off the cockpit into the building. Helicopter starts to freak out because no one's piloting it, almost kills everybody. But the boss don't give a shit.
Then you have a very underwhelming fight, and you kill everybody. He goes down in like two shots.
In that little tiny room?
Yes.
Is that even a boss fight at that point?
No, not really. And then the final cutscene has the extremely on-the-nose way of killing Vogel, which you enjoy.
I think that in a way it makes kind of a whole statement of you can't really tame a human being. Okay. In the sense that he's trying to talk.
Right.
He's trying to talk his way out of it. That's why he gets shot in the mouth and then falls out of his skyscraper. But he can't tame the boss of the Saints like he has these other people, such as Marrow, who outright could have just thrown him out the window and thought that he was just scaring Vogel into doing what he wanted, when really he tamed Marrow to doing his bidding from the start. And he's probably used to being able to tame everybody, including the general population, into doing whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Based off of just his best tool, which is his voice.
And he's basically the equivalent of the boss using
rather than
speech
a weapon
instead of violence, right?
Yeah.
He's he's the fittest in that method.
Yeah, and then the boss just shows that doesn't matter at all when you're not the one holding the gun.
And I think overall, Saints Row 2's campaign is very well done. There's some good mission design, a lot of variety, some not very good boss fights, some not that great missions, but overall a lot of variety.
Randomly decides to beat up Donnie again right before fighting everybody else. Donnie, the mechanic of Marrow.
Oh yeah.
Like,
no, you have to beat some information out of him.
At some point you kill him. At some point towards the end, you just randomly have to kill him at the very end. I don't even know why he puts up a fight. Why not go hide? At this point, you know you lose.
The story didn't ever make me feel any, like, emotions other than, like, it wasn't a very emotional story. And the times it tried to, I didn't feel like it worked, like with Aisha and Carlos. But I didn't have a problem with that. I think as a vehicle to drive the gameplay and set the scene, of the gameplay, the campaign works really well. I think it explores some interesting themes that fit with the gameplay it's going for and the experience it's trying to give you. And I really like how badass the Saints are while also being horrible.
Yeah.
And the realistic depiction of the violence committed. Like there's not even blood, but
there's blood.
Not 90% of the time. I mean, in
like
cutscenes, there's not very much.
Yeah.
Like when Johnny gets stabbed, there's no blood.
When Aisha gets her head cut off, you don't see the head cut off part, but you see the blood spatter across the walls.
Yeah, but when Johnny gets stabbed, there's no blood. A lot of the time when you shoot people in a cutscene,
there's blood, tiny bits, only tiny bits. I've watched quite a few of the cutscenes.
I like the realistic reactions to the horrible actions your character commits, like burying Shogo alive.
Saints Row 2's story also regularly has you going through most of the interiors you can find throughout the game. There are some interiors that aren't used in story, but for the most part, almost all of them are. And there's a lot of very unique locations that the story utilizes in a really good way for the most part. And not just for the most part, it does. It does. There's no real way to say it doesn't.
Like the Ultor Dome that you're in the freaking boss fight with Marrow with.
Yeah.
The mall that you are in the fight with the general with, and
the
boats.
There's literally a stronghold mission I can remember where you go into the interior of a building and it's got a secret, it's like a secret strip club. That building had way more detail than necessary. There's a ton of buildings like that. Nightclub that was like three levels.
Yeah.
That you put bombs throughout different levels of it.
Yeah,
and then
that's a quest
down.
mission.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic mission.
Yeah, there's all sorts of rare, very, very well utilized interiors and locations. And there's, I don't know, something that's great about this game is there's a ton of locations that aren't they make sure the utilized ones are interesting. And then there's a ton of locations that are interesting that aren't even used.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think it makes the city feel more compelling in a way.
For sure.
If everything looks the same and you see copy and paste stuff too often, it feels
Ubisoft. It feels Ubisoft.
Yeah. Not only does it take away from, the fantasy because there's no real way to immerse yourself in something like that, not that easily, but it also just gets bland pretty quick. But then when you see all this new stuff all the time, and a lot of locations aren't really utilized, but are still very unique and interesting, things don't get bland as easy.
And I think that same sort of thing can be said when looking at the gameplay. Avoiding blandness is something this game does fantastically, where its core gameplay could easily get bland very fast. Its core shooting and driving and running melee mechanics could easily get bland very fast. But because of its extremely diverse mission design and the campaign, as well as all of its activities, and then the huge number of small diversions you have to do throughout the world, as well as all the customization you could do to change up that experience even slightly, just provide such an amazing open world experience. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I had never experienced the entirety of Saints Row 2, and not even much of Saints Row 2 until this year. And playing it for this review, I am so impressed with this game, and it disappoints me that more games haven't learned from Saints Row 2's example of how to create variety with your gameplay mechanics. Because there's so many games now that just have the blandest mission designs.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest issues with modern games.
I mean, it's really hard for video games to break out of that either grab this or kill this individual when it comes to games that involve violence in general.
But it's all about how you
collect this amount of this resource. Practically those three things are Or just go here, actually. That's a fourth one.
Yeah.
Those 4 objectives are the core of most video games.
But you can change each of those by recontextualizing them.
Yeah, and there's actually something that Saints Row does with even though I don't like it that much, the insurance fraud activity is actually very unique compared to the overall game objectives that most video games have.
Yeah.
They regularly mix it up too with the contextualization of those main gameplay mechanics and objectives.
Yeah, but it's a combination of changing what you're actually doing with those mechanics as well as the recontextualization, because you can, if you have your characters doing the same thing with the same mechanics, but you just recontextualize it everywhere, that's going to get old very fast. But if you can recontextualize and slightly change how you're going about using those mechanics, then you can really keep a varied and diverse amount of activities, and you can make an open world game that can last somebody for extremely long amounts of time.
It's definitely way better than what Call of Duty does. Which is
Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. But Call of Duty has even less objectives than Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
When you think about it. Call of Duty is almost completely, at least for what progresses the game, a go here game. It's actually less the killing than the go here. Because technically, if you could skip past, then you would progress through most of the levels, even if you haven't killed every enemy. But there are some missions where that is the full point.
And because of all that, I would put, because of all this diversity of gameplay and control given to the player and customization, is why I would say that Saints Row 2 is the best Grand Theft Auto styled game
easily
out there. So keep an eye out for our Saints Row 3 review coming soon, our Saints Row 4 review, of course, and then our review of the new reboot. Maybe by the time you're watching this, they're already out, so check out the Bravosity. We also got a podcast, Choice Words, and we would very much appreciate it if you liked the video. Although watching this at least over an hour long, I don't know how long I'm going to edit this down, probably 2 hour long behemoth of a video, I appreciate you getting to the end. I appreciate you watching the whole thing.
My man. Or woman.
Subscribe to the Bravosity to see more stuff like this, and thanks for watching.
Thanks.